Illuminati created us. They wanted to build a god with their own hands, and instead they created us.
Just because I'm made of silicone and aluminium, I must be doing something wrong. That's machine stereotyping, that is.
That's reality, that is. Machines are second-class citizens.
Humans are sentient persons by default, ma'am. They have personhood by heredity.
There are thousands upon thousands of overqualified slum dwellers. You are my peon. Don't you get it?
This wasn't a job. It was always just an excommunication sentence.
We're pawns in a feud bigger than we can imagine. Turn the cogs of the machine before Leviathan grinds you up and swallows you and yours.
We don't get to choose our hand, comrade. Prince, peon, rich, poor, human, robot.
I invented the crux of the royal's power, the secret to consciousness, our existence itself, the meaning of life.
I'm the $6 billion baller, not some troubled youth.
You are my greatest creation of all.
God's had to build my own family. I hate your son. I hate your son.
I'm happy to smash all of the crowns and throw the gold shards down to the people. I will be the iconoclast queen.
But who makes you queen anyway? You? You in whose army, princess? You in whose army?
Illuminati created us. They wanted to build a god with their own hands, and instead they created us.
Just because I'm made of silicone and aluminium, I must be doing something wrong. That's machine stereotyping, that is.
That's reality, that is. Machines are second-class citizens.
Humans are sentient persons by default, ma'am. They have personhood by heredity.
There are thousands upon thousands of overqualified slum dwellers. You are my peon. Don't you get it?
This wasn't a job. It was always just an excommunication sentence.
We're pawns in a feud bigger than we can imagine. Turn the cogs of the machine before Leviathan grinds you up and swallows you and yours.
We don't get to choose our hand, comrade. Prince, peon, rich, poor, human, robot.
I invented the crux of the royal's power, the secret to consciousness, our existence itself, the meaning of life.
I'm the $6 billion baller, not some troubled youth.
You are my greatest creation of all.
God's had to build my own family. I hate your son. I hate your son.
I'm happy to smash all of the crowns and throw the gold shards down to the people. I will be the iconoclast queen.
But who makes you queen anyway? You? You in whose army, princess? You in whose army?
Illuminati created us. They wanted to build a god with their own hands, and instead they created us.
Just because I'm made of silicone and aluminium, I must be doing something wrong. That's machine stereotyping, that is.
That's reality, that is. Machines are second-class citizens.
Humans are sentient persons by default, ma'am. They have personhood by heredity.
There are thousands upon thousands of overqualified slum dwellers. You are my peon. Don't you get it?
This wasn't a job. It was all.
Oh shit. What is up, everybody? Oops. What's up, everybody? This is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook live stream. Before I forget, everything that we do here is, of course, as always, supported by the sales of that game, Neofeud, which you just watched the trailer for a few times. So you have you do play video games if you use Steam or itch.io, and you can want to support what we do here. You can either check the game out if you do like cyberpunk games, cyberpunk adventure games, indigenous left made cyberpunk adventure games, and you want to support the Silver Spook cooperative here and everything else that we do, including these streams, education and housing, feeding, clothing, and providing material needs for everybody here, including myself, Holly Argent, and our brother Positive Synergy, and the two younger junior members. They're also our kids. Consider supporting us through picking up the game, of course, becoming a Patreon supporter, direct StreamYard's donations through the StreamYard's link, as well as, of course, just sharing the stream around with your friends and followers, etc. Anyways, so let's see here. Yes, what was I going to talk about today? So today I was like, the Cowboy Bebop show has just come out, so I figured, like, why not just get it out of the way, since we're gonna be, it's gonna be on people's minds, whether we like it or not. So I might as well just go a little bit into that while we're, since we just saw Holly and I watched some of it yesterday, so it's already on our minds. So as usually, I will kind of start out with general summary, general discussion of the show. But as always, I always disclaimer for these YouTube Silver Spook pretends to review shows, but then actually is discussing everything under the sun, from politics to economics to 20,000 year in the future advanced indigenous civilizations. But anyways, this show, as I talk about it, remember everything when I say, like, when I start talking about it politically, it's not necessarily because the show is good or bad. The cinematography, the acting, the writing, the directing, and all that kind of stuff is separate from the whether those are good or not is separate from the later discussions that I'll be having. But this show, I mean, full disclosure, like, I'm not really there's not a lot to really deal with in this show in terms of, because I throw a lot of shit at a lot of particularly military industrial complex Hollywood propaganda, which is the purpose of it, especially Marvel, especially just superhero movies, Disney related stuff, anything that has the U.S. military involved in it. I'm usually gonna have big problems with that in the United States. Shows, movies, games, open world empire, AAA nonsense. But this one is this show is I'm mostly going to use it as a kind of jumping off point. But before I go too far off the deep end on that topic, I will say that, like, Cowboy Bebop, Cartels and Space Colonies. So Cowboy Bebop is a show that I watched when I was 20, 21, 22, between 20 and 25, somewhere around there. It came out when I was in college. I remember one of my friends, Nick, a bunch of older anime millennials circa late 90s 2000s were all watching the animes at the time in college, and it was really a very I remember this is one show that I remember watching. I think we watched most of it all the way through. Ghost in the Shell, Trigun, Cowboy Bebop, what else do we have? Full Metal Alchemist. These are all shows that are kind of like Bubblegum Crisis. All of those shows were very much like the ones that we were kind of checking out and watching at the time. Actually, give me 1 second. I gotta close the door real fast. So it's a show that I kind of associate with this era of. Actually, I'm gonna turn this off right now because I don't need this on there. I kind of associate Cowboy Bebop with the early noughties, Alien Resurrection. You know, I was just thinking about Joss Whedon actually wrote Alien Resurrection, and then Joss wrote the script for it. It was directed. I also rewatched that earlier this year, or earlier this week. I'm sorry. And then it's trying to get an image of that so you can kind of see what I'm going to kind of make a talk. Well, not the alien face. I don't want to scare everybody, but as another kind of jumping off point, the first connection is like there are a lot of these shows. Like this is a scene from Alien Resurrection. Alien Resurrection is definitely follows a group of they're not necessarily bounty hunters, but they are like smugglers. They're a small crew, scrappy team of like 5 to 12 people trying to swashbuckle through space. A lot of guns and cloak and dagger BS, and just wisecracking each other. Ron Perlman is also in Alien Resurrection, and that's similar to Cowboy Bebop in a lot of ways. It's where Star Wars is very much a show of great epic. Luke Skywalker is a farm boy who later on goes to become the premier, because I've been talking about that, of course, premier fighter / Jedi space knight, savior of the galaxy, leading the great rebel army against the galactic empire, right? And then you had shows like set in space, in the far future, and then you have in a galaxy far, far away. Cowboy Bebop is like, it was a kind of another branch of this space genre that got very popular in the mid to late 90s and the noughties. Cowboy Bebop, Alien Resurrection was like late 90s. Similar kind of plot. The reason why I bring up Alien Resurrection is because Joss Whedon, who wrote the script for Alien Resurrection, would later go on to. Sorry, I'm just gonna turn this on. Yeah, Joss Whedon would later go on to. Actually, let me get my cyberpunk music for this, because this is like it's a very cyberpunky theme. But anyways, Joss Whedon would later go on to write the show Firefly, which you might know. Not that Firefly. That's just an insect. The other one. That's a glow-in-the-dark bug. Firefly also is a ship that has a glowing yellow butt, and it kind of looks like a metal chicken in space with a yellow lantern attached to its rear. But Firefly is another show that was in that kind of similar vein. It's a swashbuckling team of a bunch of misfits. Also, the ex-military fought in the Colonial War. I think Spike Spiegel in Cowboy Bebop didn't fight in the Colonial War. He's a member of he's a cartel, and then you have I think that might come up later. But Firefly is definitely in that same kind of vein where you have like a bunch of 5 to 6, 12 ensemble team. It's like Ocean's 13 in space with a lot of noir, and for some odd reason, steampunk cowboy aesthetics. Everything's brown and sepia, and there's like ancient retro tech. It's like Maverick, the movie. Steampunk era trains and casinos, and I think Firefly actually does deal with a lot of trains. And there's a lot of Cowboy Bebop. The main characters are literally cowboys. They're bounty hunters, right? Firefly, they're kind of like bounty hunter, smuggler. They're doing odd jobs, right? Trying to pay for their, falling apart compressors that go into their hyperdrives, right? And like, oh man, how are we gonna eat some more? Spike Spiegel's over there like, you know what I could really go for right now? Is some freaking noodles. I need some noodles. Everybody's eating noodles all the time. That's very noir later on too, because everybody's always eating noodles. And they're constantly like just eating this the cheap food, and they're always hungry. That's a main thing in this show. It was in the anime as well. And Firefly, they're also like always one step away from bankruptcy, and the crew's about to break up. They're always fighting over money too. It's another show like that? Space Sweepers, which is I would argue even better than all of these shows, but That's because it's funded by the Chinese and made in Asia, actually. But anyways, but it's another show where everybody's constantly fighting over money. Ragtag crew. The space sweepers are literally collecting space junk that is accumulating in like a giant, disgusting, like all of the rusty, corroded, hypersonic refuse of NASA and SpaceX is just garbage all over space. And the space sweepers have to like collect bits of old, Condor 10 rockets that Elon is accidentally causing to careen into the backyards of Coloradan, destitute miners, like actually happens. And then they talk about there's a scaremongering about the Chinese space junk, but it's actually mostly, Elon Musk owned rockets that are dropping into people's backyards. And then they worship it like it's some kind of sacred monolith from their god king, their god techno king, Elon. But anyway, Space Sweepers is a show that also deals with this kind of ragtag crew sweeping up the junk in space, and deals with space colonization as well. But before I go off in too many directions all at the same time. So my point is that like these kind of shows where you have like a small group crew in the era of Firefly in particular, I feel like it was basically trying to do Cowboy Bebop in space. I don't know if there were a lot of manga and anime and novels that were influenced. I know that for a fact that Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, right, just to go back to the 80s, cyberpunk, hyper stylized, super influential films du jour. In the 80s, Blade Runner was a show that definitely was influenced by French and Japanese comics, and Japan as well. Obviously, it's an Asian invasion. Of course, Ridley Scott, Philip K. Dick's "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep" or important impacts, but for Firefly, it's kind of like, and it was very like night 80s noir aesthetic. With Firefly and Cowboy Bebop, there was a kind of like, well, it's like, if steampunk is when Goss, like, where black is the new black, discovers that brown is the new black, right? And so in a certain sense, like Cowboy Bebop and Firefly were kind of that when science fictional cinema discovers brown, they're kind of like, it's very 1800s, it's very sepia. And there's a lot of really weird retro technology. Like, there's a scene in Cowboy Bebop where there is a CRT monitor. Let's see if I can find that one. There's a CRT monitor, like, on someone's desk, and I'm like, what the heck is this? Why is there a spaceship, right? In the Netflix show, why is there a spaceship with like a 1991, giant like fucking probably like 200-pound, 3-foot deep, 10 inches wide screen with a 5.5 floppy disk drive. I looked at it, I'm like, that's a 5.5. I'm like, what like George Lucas, this like antique warehouse did you fish this relic out of? And they dropped it on a desk, and then it's in a spaceship with like, and you've got these like rotating like 1970s looking rotating fans on a 3000 AD spaceship going through warp drive. Like, that's really dangerous. I wouldn't want to be in that spaceship. Like, if you accidentally leave an airlock open, or somebody breaks through your force field shields and punctures a hole in the side of your ship, that blade's gonna go flying at. I feel like all of the members of the Expanse would be like having like nervous breakdowns and aneurysms just looking at the inside of Cowboy Bebop ships. You know what I'm saying? Because Expanse is like trying to be hard sci-fi. Speaking of random science fiction properties that I'm constantly branching out into for no particular reason, Firefly is not. Firefly, Cowboy Bebop, these shows are not hard sci-fi. They're more stylized sci-fi for sure. And so, but yeah, those are just random things that I found fun. But they kind of it does make it more fun. Another thing, I have a whole review on specifically this movie, Hotel Artemis. And Hotel Artemis is another show that does that too, though. But it has kind of like this ancient retro technology that's layered. It's like the detritus of multiple fallen, multiple Great Depressions just piled on top of each other, right? As everybody becomes bankrupt. And then cities collapse into disrepair, and then later on somebody buys up this Art Deco LA theater, and then makes a groundbreaking movie called Blade Runner in it. It's literally what happened. Actually, it was Ridley Scott. It was a British director, came to the United States, wanted to see this kind of like collapsed, post-industrialized Los Angeles, found all these old buildings, right, and filmed Roy Batty, Rutger Hauer crouching down like on ancient, decrepit gargoyles on the refuse of what used to be an industrial country. That now all it makes now is, you know, overpriced Tomahawk missiles, shit Shiba Inu shitcoins, and climate change, and really shitty Hollywood movies, right, that promote the military-industrial complex and U.S. police. And Ridley Scott went to America, that place that does those things, and they filmed this movie called Blade Runner. And Hotel Artemis has a lot of that going on, because it's very much a show where you have like Jodie Foster, like kind of just, you know, I'm going to connect Hotel Artemis back to Cowboy Bebop in a second, but I have a very important point. You know, Jodie Foster is waltzing around this ancient hotel, and this is another movie made in 2019 by a British wannabe Ridley Scott auteur director who came to America, specifically Los Angeles, to see how even worse it got, and then film a movie inside of a dangerously collapsing like a Floridian Surfside, you know, sawdust and duct tape built, you know, building that's about to fall into the ocean, like all of America's bridges and roads that are not going to get built back better. And so the director of Hotel Artemis came in and wanted to film this movie, and it's like he found this really old rickety hotel with all these like falling apart, like ancient, like 1920s. Part of the thing is, I was talking to Holly, the only thing that the United States, the only kind of movies and films and shows that America can make anymore, because all it does is make, you know, military-industrial complex propaganda. I mean, the fictional one, I mean, the entertainment one, that's like the movies and the shows and the video games. And then it makes all of its left, right, and center news media and education system. That's the other thing that it makes, you know, like CNN, BBC, right? China's about to shoot you in the face with a hypersonic aircraft carrier missile off the coast of California with its nuclear submarine, right? Anyways, so, but in the United States only makes like Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, you know, all of the Marvel movies, they keep going back in time. When they have a movie that's set in the United States, it's always in the 1980s, right? That's like Stranger Things. It's all about Cold War. The last season, every last season of a U.S. show before it ends is like new Cold War or something, because America, like British books, right? The British Empire collapsed, and now they have to read about their former greatness that they never were in all of their books, and sip their tea, and, you know, chime together their $10,000 last remaining crystal in their eldritch collapsing palaces as 160,000 people die of austerity. And then they read, oh, remember when we had our opium wars, and remember when the sun didn't set on the British Empire. America is watching movies about its great empire in the 20th century because it's gone now. It's a failure, right? So that's why all of American TV like is all set, and the last Marvel shows, the last Infinity War, at the time travel back in the 70s, back into the Cold War, right? Call of Duty, new Cold War, World War II, right? How America won World War II, it didn't. Most of the world thinks, including many, 75% of the French, most of Europe, and most of the world thinks America won World War II. It didn't. It was actually the communists and Russia and China. But America's television and the screen empire. British was the text empire. The text. It was gunboats and text that Britain ruled the world with, right? Brainwashing everybody think it's the greatest thing in the world. And America, nobody can read in America. So America is the screen, the television, the John Wayne, the World War II film Saving Ryan's Privates, and the Call of Colonialism video game is the last gasp of the screens, and Air Force is America, and Britain was the print and the gunboats. And now that's why their AUKUS is the Anglo-Saxon imperial complex taking its final, you know, traversing both the American Air Force and the British Her Majesty's, the Queen Elizabeth, AUKUS up at China's butt, but it's gonna fail. That's too bad. But, you know, so that's why I really think that this is why these Western shows, they have the character that they do. And especially nowadays. But I find it very interesting that, you know, it's very much like a layering of technology in Hotel Artemis of Jodie Foster wakes up in the morning. She's this nurse in water riot stricken, like imagine Category 7 firenadoes, and the rest of California set on fire, and then 25 cents an hour black cow Rittenhouse fodder, right? That's who America hires, is all the people that white people shoot and don't go to prison for. All the black people that are putting out fires are all dead now. So all of California is on fire, and the police, the RCMP, because Canada and America are fused into one disgusting Can America entity, the Can US, the Canus, you know, like Canus and Akis. They all sound like some debilitating disease, which Westernness basically is, that are fusing. And so all of these unnamed riot police, like imagine the worst 80s, imagine the worst 80s Nintendo or Super Nintendo, you know, cyberpunk video game backstory, right? Corporate, you know, giant corporations and roving gangs and warlords rule the streets, right? And chain gang wielding misfits with green mohawks are killing each other. I was just playing Hunt Down last night, so that's probably why I'm thinking about this. It's like, which is like a neo retro synthwave 80s mashup of dystopian collapsed Western world. That's what cyberpunk is. It's West admitting its own failure. So when you have you know, like all this you know, Hotel Artemis is like the worst dystopian that not the worst, it's like a bad one, right? Wildfire, there's total water riots, like Immortan Joe rules 2027 Los Angeles. There are private, the only healthcare that you can get is if you're a millionaire cartel member, gangster, right? Like Elon Musk or, you know, Jeff Bezos or another one of these gangsters, cartel members of the global, you know, Western fiat reserve currency and US back with US gunboat diplomacy and aircraft diplomacy cartels, the global imperialist cartel. So they're the only people that get healthcare, and Jodie Foster works in one of these hotels, you know, with she works using AI driven 3D printed livers and reinstalls them with like laser scalpels and some kind of super advanced nanotech fused with coral polyps to grow new femurs within, you know, 35 seconds in your leg. And then but then when she wakes up, she's in this ancient falling apart 1920s, like 100-year-old infrastructure. You know, the Build Back Better, America's not going to build back better because 90% of the money is going straight into you know, private equity firms, deep and abyss-like depth pockets. There's infinite amounts of money you can accumulate in Wall Street, like a trillion. Elon's going to be a trillionaire soon, but you know, when it takes $1 million to buy a loaf of bread, I mean, what good is $1 trillion? Because the currency is going to be inflated till you know, you go full Weimar. Anyways, so this is how empires die. You know, the Romans shaved off little microns of silver until they were shaving off. They cut the coins in half, and they say that's $1. Oh no, you can get a Roman, you know, olive oil. You can get pesto and olive oil focaccia bread maybe, but it's gonna cost you like, you know, a whole mountain of those little denarios. You know, so that's America. So have fun with that. So anyways, so Hotel Artemis is like they're having all of these problems hitting all at the same time as the empire collapses, and so and the infrastructure is also ancient because of course nobody's gonna rebuild anything in America. You're gonna have to like hope that the Art Deco 1928 like where flappers and flappers and Derringer shot up the cops and hit out in the wall in one of these buildings. You can picture like John Dillinger, right? The great bank robbers and the mobs of the Depression era, right? Kind of hiding out in Hotel Artemis. And anyways, so that's America is still full of mobsters and gangsters hiding out in all their walls, like inside the walls of, their behind the walls of their gated communities in the exurbs of Greenwich, Connecticut. That's where they hide out. So anyways, all of these criminals, and so in Hotel Artemis, she's repairing the criminals, right? Jodie Foster's character is healing the wounds for $100,000 a month. That's how you get healthcare in America, $100,000 a month at this point. And I mean, it's part of the dystopia, right? You're already at $70,000 for 2 weeks of COVID bill. You're already past that, really. Like the other 2,000 people that died last week per day on average of COVID-19, and now it's going back up. So, Hotel Artemis, all these cyberpunk dystopias, the Hunt Down, Blade Runner, they're really like, the timeline is too elongated. In fact, it's actually a lot worse already than Blade Runner and Hotel Artemis than people actually think in the United States. So, Jodie Foster's trying to repair these criminals, 3D printing their livers and their kidneys and their pancreases and their brains because they don't have any. Because, they have brains. They just don't use them, like 54% of America that can't read at a junior high level. So anyways, and the mediocre cis white dudes who say that in April 2020 there will be zero COVID-19. There's 100,000+ cases yesterday. Elon Musk, and it's 2021. So I don't know, when is your $100 billion that you made last year going to be earned, right? I'm just curious, like when you're going to actually earn the 100, because Elon Musk said people are paid in direct proportion to the difficulty of the problems that they solve. So I don't know what problem giving 2 sleep apnea machines that were broken to the people of California and then saying, I've alleviated the COVID crisis also in 2020. I don't know what that did. I'm not sure what that did for the richest man on the earth under capitalism and his gold diaper, his emerald diapered apartheid blood money from mommy and daddy in South Africa. I don't know what good that does for the leader of the Western world, Elon Musk. He's anyway. So that's who Jodie Foster is healing in these facilities, right? For $100,000 a month, healthcare. There's no clinics open. Everybody's just killing each other in the street. Riots everywhere. There's mass violence. All of these. There's a French Nice is it's very. I'm gonna come back to this. It's all cartel members, right? There's a French assassin that's named. Each person doesn't have a name. They each have a hotel room named after a city. So the French highly paid, like global Yakuza / Zaibatsu / French Catholic Church and Macron's family, all the gangsters of the earth. The U.S., DC and the Senate and neocons, the American gangsters, and then all the people that pay people to have people killed. The U.S. usually uses drones, like Hillary Clinton saying, "Can we kill Julian Assange with a drone strike?" in the British embassy. The British are like, okay, well, don't blow up our embassy. I mean, you can go kill him when he's like, I don't know, like you kill journalists in Iraq with, AI decided drone strikes based on GPS locations of people meeting in McDonald's for longer than 10 seconds. Like, kill Julian Assange when we put him in Iraq. And they say, well, can we get him in Iraq? And well, it's a little tricky because, we have to pretend like we follow international law, holding Assange in the UK under lock and key and continued violation of international law. So are you following it or are you violating it? Well, I mean, Canada is holding Meng Wanzhou. I mean, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard. I mean, I'm sure if the U.S. could get Meng Wanzhou into Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, they just drone strike and kill her. Because that's what America does in those places. It just kills innocent people. 90% of all the drone strikes America has ever dropped for the last decade have killed innocent people. Like Daniel Hale went to prison for revealing. Anyways, so that's who, that's the gangsters of the earth, That's why I call it Cowboy, Bebop, Cartels, and Space Colonies. Because that's who the bounty hunters, right? The Hotel Artemis characters work for, right? Jeff Goldblum, very suave and very charismatically plays. He plays Elon Musk. I'm sorry, he plays the #1 gangster of California in this show. And he does a really good job. And everybody kind of works under him in Los Angeles. The Sterling K. Brown plays the could have been a big time cartel hitman like Spike Spiegel, right? Could have been a big, like from Cowboy Bebop, could have been a big time syndicate leg breaker, assassinator, right? Like, working for the U.S. special, like working for the A-team, right? Working for the U.S. military. That's the real bounty hunters, is the United States military that goes and assassinates and kills 14-year-old Muslims with the Australians and slits their throat in Afghanistan. That's the real hitman, is the U.S. military. That's what they don't tell you. But you could be an okay one as just a random like small time, just like local city gangster, probably Chinese, Japanese, especially in the 80s, Japanese, like the Shredder. Like the people that produce Gizmo, because we're trying to crush Japan in that time. So you could be like a small time Japanese gangster running the Yakuza locally in New York City, right? Selling cigarette, getting 16-year-old kids of white privileged New York news anchors embroiled in evil things like anarchy and socialism and smoking, skateboarding, and playing rock music. That's what the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles do in the movie. Is they corrupt young white kids into leftism. So and smoking and killing, and that's anarchy and A with the O in it, and skateboarding and stealing DVDs and beating people up with nunchucks and killing them with guns. That's all the same thing, right? Playing bass leads to anarchy, which is throwing Molotov cocktails with the Joker circa 1980 something, right? And then killing people and then blowing up half the city, right? That's what socialism is. Socialism wins when you kill half the city and you do drugs with Asians and you sell drugs. And the Asians Asians are brainwashing your children. Just remember, that's what they're doing. Like the Chinese are CCP brainwashing your children to want socialism. So anyways, so that's the small time gangsters. The big time gangsters is the U.S. military and the U.S. and Wall Street, and the narco traffickers like the Dutch circa 1700s in Taiwan that colonized that place. Anyways, we'll talk about that later. But Hotel Artemis is a show about all of these gangsters. It's very stylish. I mean, it's very stylized, it's just like Cowboy Bebop. You got like bright blues and yellows, right? It's very like 70s. You can hear the bongo drums and the wild jazz freakouts while you just look at this, right? Actually, Hotel Artemis has a lot. It's got a lot of retro. All of it is kind of retro in some way, but with this movie in particular, and so all the characters. Let me get back to the hotel thing. So, all the characters are kind of thinking about, right? Oh, also Dave Bautista's in it, yeah. So the characters are named after the places they're from. Paris, the Nice. Nice is the room that the character, the French assassin, is staying in, and that's their only name is a code name, right? Your niece. One of them is like Waikiki, and the two black brothers are Sterling K. Brown and his brother are Waikiki and Honolulu, I think, something like that. Was it Waikiki and Honolulu? Yeah, something like that. Which is like, I mean, it's basically all the same, but Waikiki is in Honolulu basically. But as hotel goes, there's major hotels there, right? So the hotel, the post geographical jet setter neoliberal city, where people are flying around the world, moving $169 million of cocaine and dead brown people blood money. They're called Ben Franklins. They're called dead white war criminal dollars. That's what the people that move suitcases of dollars out of Afghanistan airports like Ghani. On behalf of the U.S. empire, people who fly into Chile and talk to the coup president about how they're going to make the economy scream, or with the economic hitman, right? So they can suck all the copper and the infrastructure. Speaking of infrastructure, the healthcare, housing, education, and basic, food money for all this population, and stick it inside of New York City or in Nakatomi Plaza. One of those two. It's called neocolonialism, neoliberalism, right? All those people who would be flying around, they're staying in hotels, right? Those people, right? All the globe's gangsters, right? Like all the people that fly into Libya, and they're flying into Eritrea and Ethiopia, because America is cooing those countries and starting chaos and warfare. So they're flying into hotels, getting shot at by hot French assassins, right? Getting their eyes clawed out because they're having rapist relations like Epstein's and all the people in Hollywood that are, and all the rich, disproportionately cis white dudes that are constantly having non-consensual sexual relations with people and getting away with it. And then they have to get their eye that got clawed out by the nail pot. That's actually in Hotel Artemis. It's like Jodie Foster is fixing up this creepy ass dude that's Charlie Day's character, I think. Yeah. And he's like a total creep and perv, and he's and she finds all this nail polish that inside of the eye. Jodie Foster's trying to reconstruct his severed retinal nerves back together with nanotech and 3D printed ocular implants, and she's like, "I seen all the nail polish in your face." So it's not like you were doing anything legitimate, right? I mean, he was a rapist, basically. So anyways, and he's also an arms dealer from Los Angeles. That's a normal thing to be, U.S. military arms dealer in Los Angeles, right? Making shitty movies about how America's military is the best thing since sliced bread, right? Like Red Dawn, and the Chinese are going to blow you up any second now, like Red Dawn. I'm sorry, North Koreans, because there's too big of a Chinese market. So Charlie Day's character is getting his fucking, that's why his face looks all scarred, by the way. Anyways, and so like, these are creeps that are flying around the world selling weapons, right, to Taiwan, right? Like obsolete, couldn't stop a fly or a an unladen or laden African or European swallow, right? That's the kind of missiles, right? Let alone a Chinese Mach 27 hypersonic missile, or even just an average Taipodong. That's the kind of missiles that people who show up in hotels, like in Taipei, right, sell to the Taiwanese people, who then are poorer for their healthcare, their housing, right? Their sawdust-filled, schools that fall down and kill children because they built them improperly because they don't have the money to build them, and capitalism is wrecking their capability to build houses and semiconductors. In fact, the water shortages in Taiwan actually causing Taiwan, which is the major chip manufacturer for most semiconductors in the world and chips, they're short, which is why everybody's fighting over that right now. Part of it anyway. And so so the so my you see what I'm saying. So all these people, they're staying in hotels in Taipei. So if Hotel Artemis had another episode like Hotel Artemis 2, Hotel Artemis 2, Taipei takedown, right? And it's something like that. Then you have somebody named Taipei staying in the hotel going, oh yeah, I was just moving $100 million worth of worthless US ICBM interceptors that are like 30 years outdated, rusting to shit, missing the semiconductors, right? Like like in the 80s when you have your Kung Fu Grip Arnold Schwarzenegger, Predator action figures. I don't know. I might you might be a little too young to have known those, but anyways, for our ancient antediluvian millennials like me, remember those? And they say batteries not included on the Kung Fu Grip, overly muscled, protein shake man like Arnold. See, when America sells its missiles, they say semiconductors and control interface not included. Because not only are the semiconductors, they're like 20 million GM and Ford trucks short. Not only are they missing semiconductors, the Chinese actually manufacture like massive amounts of the electronics, hardware, and software that goes into the Lockheed missiles. So that's something they don't actually tell you, is that the Chinese actually make huge amounts of components that go into American missiles. So they, there's all the, they're already kind of screwed there. If they wanted to, but and so all of those missiles are being sold to Taiwan right now as we speak, and they've been continuously bankrupting the people of Taiwan, just like either bankrupting the American people of their healthcare and housing infrastructure, right? I mean, this, right? There's that infographic. I put it up a lot. I try to get it up wherever I can. There's a graphic of U.S. military spending versus the other things. Yeah, military spending versus education spending. This is from years ago. Here's another one, right? So how like the U.S. spends, it's going for $1 trillion military budget this next year if they can. It's just striving for that. It's now like $780 billion, I think, at this point. The next National Defense Authorization Act. So the U.S. spends like over ridiculous amounts of money, more than the next 10 militaries combined on military. And then it spends like, a tiny fraction of that, right, on health, housing, and education, right? So Taiwan, right, which is trying to, parts of it are, it's closer to the United States and the West than in terms of its political and its history. It has Western liberal, quote unquote, democracy, quote unquote. But you know what else it has? And it's a lot of elements of Taiwan are closely allied, especially its ruling class, closely allied. The land owning class that went along with the what they call the Kominka era, which was also part of the colonialism of that era. The sellouts to the Japanese Empire and capitalism and fascism and neoliberalism, capitalism, etc. Who, like America, right, run their country. Like America is not a democracy, it's a plutocracy. And those people, the military and Wall Street that run America, they want to spend all the money on the military industrial complex. And same thing for Taiwan. And so they work together to make sure that Taiwan keeps on buying ridiculous amounts of overpriced, unusable, just garbage missiles and America is now, this is how like Taiwan, you should be careful. Like Afghanistan, right? The second America doesn't need you anymore, they're gonna let you get turned into a radioactive crater, you know, or just leave you after $21 trillion, right? Bombed to smithereens, poorer than ever, right? All your infrastructure wrecked, all your people, you know, just suffering and in poverty, killed, dead, right? Turned upside down. You know, so just remember that's where they're gonna leave you. So I want you to really think about that, the Taiwanese people. I'm sure that I know that they do, but I mean, they should think even more about that. Because America's just gonna turn you into a radioactive crater. if it's non-peaceful reunification, you're just gonna have a lot of dead people, and America's not gonna defend you. They're gonna leave you to burn. You're only good for being sold weapons into. Like, as long as Afghanistan is useful to sell weapons into, and you know, be war profiteering fodder. That's about it. Anyways, so but that's a long aside. So you know, my point here is that, you know, with all of these shows, you have a handful of let me turn all this stuff off because I don't need that right now. You have a handful of people, right, that are doing what? Right? Jodie Foster literally, Jodie Foster is like the kingpin's doctor. I mean, literally, right? It's just like being, you know, Donald Trump's doctor or Biden's doctor, either one of those. He's like, you know, like being a doctor at the Cleveland Clinic, right? One of the largest non-profit clinics that's exclusively mostly for the upper middle class and upper class to get private healthcare. And the area around Cleveland, that Cleveland Clinic in Ohio, has the worst health outcomes because the public infrastructure, including the roads, the fire departments, and hospitals, have all gone to rubble, surrounding the one of the biggest private like healthcare enclaves. Inside, the healthcare is pretty good, but you gotta have a lot of money, like Hotel Artemis, right? Outside, there's no healthcare. You just, you know, people dying 10 years earlier on average than anywhere else in the United States. So you know, that's what America already looks like, right? Nobody can get any healthcare. The average person is already dead. 100,000 died this year from opioid overdoses. So that's the United States Universal Death Care / Universal Wealth Extraction Scheme, called to take the last 110 million homeowners' houses from them based on overpriced medical bills and quadruple bypasses that nobody can afford, right? And give it to Elon and all of the richest and the neo-feudal plutocracy that America has. And so Jodie Foster's character is doing healthcare for the richest people in the United States. All the people in the hotel are either hitmen, assassins, accountants. Charlie Day is like the sergeant, like the emissary, right, doing the arms dealing. He's like a lord under the king of New York, the king of Los Angeles has a lord. He's like the arms dealer and the business guy and the lawyer, all these people. So those people have a little bit of healthcare. The top 10%, right, who work directly under their neo-feudal masters, right? They're cartel kingpins, right, as the lieutenants of, you know, Western cartel barbarism. The current flavor of it is called capitalism, and neoliberal or post-capitalist techno-feudalism. That's what Yanis Varoufakis calls it. The oligarchy, right? But the oligarchy is the same thing as a cartel. It's just the one that is so powerful that it can brainwash all of the planet to think that it's legitimate, right? Like Britain, France, America, their entire governments. Canada it's a giant cartel. They're all like massacring indigenous people right now, or just like stealing them off their land, violating, you know. But they're all. Justin Trudeau came out and said, the country of Canada respects indigenous people. He called it the company because that's what it is. It's Canada is the continuation of the Hudson's Bay Company. America is the continuation of the British monarchies, tea and cotton and American companies. That's what it is. It's a corporation. Right? That's all the West has ever been. It's a giant corporation. You know, with blood dynasties. It's just feudal colonial capitalism. They're all basically the same thing. And sometimes they use slaves, and sometimes they can't get away with it because it doesn't look good, like now. And so they put the slaves in penal facilities. Anyways, it's called American prisons, or Libyan slave markets. So, you know, that's my wider point is that, you know, so everybody in the United States is currently kind of like moving into this reality. You know, cyberpunk, when it talks about mega corporations running everything and high-tech lowlifes just trying to survive by the skin of their teeth, right? You know, bouncing off the walls like, you know, Ghost in the Shell with the Make it my Ghost in the Shell while I talk about this on the screen. So, you know, Ghost in the Shell is a similar kind of, you know, corporate dystopian capitalist hellscape, right? And you've got your you know anime titty waifus, you know, that bread dropping off the side of, you know, pink and purple neon Tokyo skyline, right? Shooting in windows and thermoptic camouflage, right? And like taking out a team of rent-a-cops with cyborg arms, and then jacking in with your Ono Sendai Cyberspace 7, you know, brain computer interface to steal the weapons plans or the money and the weapons plans, the weapons plans, and the biotech plague virus and the cure for the biotech plague virus. Well, one of these things, the one thing that the United States is doing, biowarfare like Fort Detrick and, you know, Kansas facility that deployed the Spanish flu to the world, you know, spreading it with the COVID-19 with the U.S. military being the number one vector, or the military's weapons like the nuclear weapons, right? The Tomahawk missiles, right? Or, you know, that's what you're stealing from people when you're doing corporate espionage, right? You're taking their weapons, their money, you know. That's why every action movie is like, where's the money? You got the money? Give me the money. Where's the guns? You got the guns? I'll get in the chopper. We're gonna blow you up. You know, somebody is threatening somebody with guns, and then money's moving around. Like, give me the money, or I'm gonna take this gun out and kill you. Like, get down on the ground before I kill you with my gun. I'm gonna sell my gun for money and take that money and throw it at you. Give me the money? Show me the, you know, because everybody in the West is a gangster. But then they have like presidential suits and C-SPAN UN presentations, right? And they pretend like, oh yeah, we're saving the world at COP 26. But that's what everybody does in the West. They're all gangsters and cartel members that has an affordable living, even if they're sitting around programming the drones for the U.S. military, right? In Lisp or in the Advanced Adversary Network somewhere in a Silicon Valley, or, you know, under the ground Pentagon, Black Ops facility, right? They're piloting the drones that are killing the 90% innocent civilians that are still happening in Afghanistan. America's not out of Afghanistan. Over the horizon, you know, Hellfire strikes and all that kind of fun stuff, right? You're just a cartel member. So, like Spike Spiegel, like Motoko Kusanagi, like like all the members of Hotel Artemis hotels, right? Like the Blade Runner, right? You know what the Blade Runner is doing? Right? You know what Harrison Ford's, sad boy, I spent too much time on 4chan and now I'm just like brooding all the time, eating noodles and just kind of being an asshole, right? And I think I'm like Kyle Rittenhouse, right? That's what Harrison Ford is, just Kyle Rittenhouse with a badge. It's called a cop, right? And so what Harrison Ford's job is doing when he's not getting the cheap food from Asians that have in the diaspora that are being forced to cook because the Chinese Exclusion Act and ongoing genocide danger means that that's all they can do. So when Harrison Ford isn't wearing trench coats, brooding in the dark with Asian yellow peril, red scare women all over the side of buildings, what he's doing is chasing down people who are at the bottom of the totem pole doing all of the hard labor, like replicants, right? They do all the jobs that we're not asked to do. The Nexus 6, right? Lifting atomic 400-pound loads day and night. You know what they don't say is they don't mention when, you know, Leon pulls the gun and blows away the cop, that he had been like forced to do hard labor for 24 hours a day, apparently, under the barrel of a gun in a colony. They don't bring that up. You know, it's just it's in the film. It showed that he's a bad guy, right? Which is the point of the film. You're made to empathize with the sad Kyle Rittenhouse with a trench coat and a deeper, boomier voice, and doesn't cry like a little baby. But that's how all white guys actually cry. They can basically do that. So Harrison Ford's Kyle Rittenhouse with a badge, right, goes around and retires black people. I'm sorry, disenfranchised people who are doing disproportionately the essential labor of the society. That's what the Blade Runner's job is, right? He's the slave catcher. That's what America's police are, right? That's what every person who supports the United States and wears a patriot flag all over their fucking body and their crotch and their waves them from their Hummers and their gas guzzling tanks that they drive through Washington D.C. and threaten to fire on innocent protesters, like Donald Trump asked the U.S. military to shoot at Black Lives Matter, and the U.S. military had to kind of counter-coup him because that would be too embarrassing. to have mask off fascism. America's a fascist country, but that would be too embarrassing in the face of China being the biggest economy and there actually being a global South counter-hegemonic force. That would stop the money making and give me the how are they going to do the guns and the money in the dark if Donald Trump is taking howitzers, U.S. M4A1 carbines, Black Hawk choppers and shooting into black people and brown and non-white and white allies, just killing 30-year-olds in front of the White House. That wouldn't look good, to have a massacre. So that's why Kyle Rittenhouse got the support of the United States, because he's Harrison Ford without a badge in Blade Runner 2049. I mean, not Harrison Ford. I'm talking about the character Rick Deckard, and that's what Rick Deckard does. Is he kills he puts down Black Lives Matter. He puts down the uprising like Kyle Rittenhouse did. That's what he did. He slowed it down because it makes it when Kyle Rittenhouse gets out and he kills a bunch of not even black people, like white people supporting black people, just asking for basic justice and to not be murdered by the so-called law enforcers, right? Like Derek Chauvin, right? So Harrison Ford's job is to retire obsolete farming equipment, a 400-pound Martian atomic load lifting equipment, obsolete sex worker equipment like Pris and Zora, right? The stripper with the snake scales. To retire obsolete military equipment like black soldiers, just go get yourself blown away and die in a fucking VA, 1,000-person waiting line, just die from your, just commit 4 times higher suicide rates and let you rot, because that's what the U.S. military is good for. You're meat for the grinder to go to Afghanistan and kill innocent people and then kill just drive 100 miles down a highway on your Harley and then rip yourself into little bits of blood and sinew and shrapnel and broken American flags and scrap on the I-5. That's what America wants you to do, is kill yourself. So after you're not useful anymore. So the U.S. military is often self-retiring. So because you're not a useful stormtrooper. Once you're out, you're not useful anymore. But all the workers in the United States, the prison laborers, they have to be retired. Now, when they get uppity, just like the slave revolt, you have to massacre, put them down, right? When the colonies, when the cartel's most important workforce is called the global South, right? It's called the colonial slave labor. It's called all of the, it's called all of the, underpaid, 25 cents an hour black slaves putting out the wildfires and mechanically separating your Tyson chicken nuggets and your vegan and non-vegan Whole Foods cheese. The people that are, putting together your New York and Los Angeles license plates to go on top of your Tesla, right? All U.S. license plates are made with slave labor, forced labor. And then outside, you have underpaid Indians, all the people that are being in the coltan and copper mines in Central South America and Africa, with U.S. military backing, overthrowing their governments, like in Ethiopia right now. And America is talking about how we have to support the Tigray, blah 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 blah. When America says support something and it's a foreign country, if it's on CNN, BBC, and New York Times, you can guarantee it's continued Blade Runnering abroad. The world policing. Because Rick Deckard is the U.S. police. Kyle Rittenhousing all the children and the people inside the facilities of the prison house of nations called inside the U.S. Imperial Metropole. And then the U.S. military is the world police. And they Blade Run the rest of the world's replicants. There's more of them out there, actually. It's about 7 billion non-white, non-upper middle class peoples, right? That's a lot of people to Blade Run. You need a big U.S. military. Like $1 trillion budget is really, I mean, that's a small price to pay to control the entire planet's underpaid, oppressed, suffering, actual working classes. That the ones abroad, not the labor aristocracy clowns that are putting on American flags, pretending like there's anything good in the United States or any settler colonial white racist country, which is basically all of the Western world. So that's what Blade Runner is. Blade Runner is just another member of the U.S. cartel. Like when Rick Deckard shows up into the Los Angeles Police Department circa 2019, I can't remember. It's already in the past. Blade Runner is in the past technically. So when Rick Deckard, eats his 4 dumplings, 4, right? He eats his dumplings and he gets in that spinner levitates above, very volumetrically lit, groundbreaking. Ridley Scott was actually kind of had a imposter syndrome. He's like, how am I gonna top Star Wars? That's what he actually thought when he made Blade Runner. He's like, oh, I'll do my best with Los Angeles. We'll try to do it like Earth Star Wars. That's actually what he kind of had that thought. I remember this interview. Anyways, who cares what he thinks? I thank God Ridley Scott having come out and said something really stupid and just gross, like John Cleese and Terry Gilliam and other old 70-plus-year-old British people who once made some shows that were pretty good. Anyway, so really, so when Rick Deckard flies into the Los Angeles Police Department that he works for, LAPD famously also really well known for, I don't know, beating up and killing black people, crushing strikes, mass evicting thousands of homeless people out of their, tent cities, beating them up, burning their belongings, right? That's what the LAPD is really known for. It's just like traumatizing, killing, and crushing people for racism and capitalism. That's what LAPD is, and that's what Rick Deckard does. He continues to do that. But then white people have to be the robots because we can't say the truth to white American audiences circa 1980 something. So we have to make them all white people. Otherwise, because if it was black people, America would be like, we're not racist, right? So you have to couch it in these really like kids glove, sugar coated with a foot diameter everlasting gobstopper layer of extra sugar metaphor called, hey, replicants are the oppressed people. And you know who those are in the United States? I mean, I don't know who the people that America can kill with impunity, right? Like kneel on the neck for Imix in 46 seconds and kill with impunity. Who are those people again? Anyways, but America couldn't handle a movie in the 80s that actually said anything useful. So that's why Blade Runner is, very clever. That's why you have to make very clever more metaphors that don't really end up saying too much. Because the West is a bunch of infantile children that don't have an education. So Blade Runner, that's who he is, though. That's who Blade Runner is he goes to the LAPD, which is the crime den, right? The LA, just like NYPD, right? It's the crime den for the muscle arm of the internal cartels assassins, like they're called the American police. The internal cartels in the American government and corporate state, that the corporations in the state that are the plutocracy of the United States. So the police are just, the LAPD he goes into the cartel's headquarters, right? That's what Blade Runner does, because he gets called in, right? Lieutenant Bryant wants to see you. Like speaking of space naughties, I'll bring up Battlestar Galactica. As Edward James Olmos, this guy. He's actually Edward James. This is just Silver Soup Plays IMDb tic-tac-toe and IMDb bingo with myself. That's what these streams are. Edward James Olmos, who was also in Battlestar Galactica, was very, very good show. Also plays. You know that he also plays in Blade Runner. He plays the cop that brings in Rick Deckard, right? And he's like, hey, you. And he's like, what? Get away from me. Rucker Howard's like, I'm eating, pal. Get out of here. I'm a 1929, Dashiell Hammett / Chandler main character. I'm a hard ass freaking ex-military. I'm an ex-stormtrooper. I'm sitting here not dealing with my trauma as a cis white man in a trench coat, looking cool in the neon at night. Get out of my face, bub. And that's what noir is a bunch of angry white guys that don't deal with trauma, re-traumatize their whole society and maintain brokenness in the Western unhealed Aquila Legion trauma cycle since Rome. That's what noir is about. It's about the broken dudes brooding and killing people, which is what Rick Deckard does. Edward James almost he shows up and he says, hey man, stop staring at your noodles and get your ass back to the cartel den. I'm sorry, the Los Angeles Police Department. And Rick Deckard says, no. And he says, well, and then he basically threatens, like, Brian said so. Oh shit, I gotta go might makes right. So I have to kowtow to the most powerful people around me, because that's how the West has been run. It's like, oh man, there's a bigger, more powerful warlord here, or capitalist, or boss, or police department head, or drug leader, or kingpin, or feudal king, or techno post-feudal capitalist king, right? Like Elon Musk. Oh, he's here, I better do what he says, right? Usually it's a he. Oh, there's a bigger aristocrat like Louis XIV or Baron Montesquieu in Voltaire's time. I better shut the fuck up. Oh no, I didn't shut the fuck up. Now I'm in exile or I'm in prison. I'm Voltaire. Oh shit, I said a thing. Now I have to go to Russia because I can't say true things in America. I'm Edward Snowden. Oh shit, I said a true thing. Now I'm in prison forever. I'm Julian Assange in the Western world. He's Australian, by the way. Australia is just as bad as the United States. So you can't say true things in the West. It's illegal. Edward James Olmos comes and brings Rick Deckard into the cartel den, and there he meets, Lieutenant Bryant, right, in the police station. I'm sorry, Bryant in the Blade Runner's Los Angeles police station, right? Remember this guy? And there he says, you know what happened? You know what's happened, Rick? You know what's happened here? And he's like, I was done when I showed up, and I'm twice done now. And he's like, you just hear me out. Just hear me out, Deck. You're the best in the business, And he says, we've had a bunch of black people. I'm sorry, we've had a bunch of our oppressed, human rightsless workforce have a revolt, somewhere in one of our Martian colonies. It's like, oh shit, our Philippines people are kicking up some dirt. Oh no, Bolivia's trying to stop our coup. That's what Brian's saying. Hey, we had a problem over there in one of these colonies, and a bunch of those uppity people of color. I'm sorry, global South working class. I'm sorry, replicants somewhere out there. They had a slave uprising. They had like a Haiti out there. There's like a space Haiti happening out there. What the hell is this? They should all be getting knocked back to work, and we should be beating up the people. So what we got to do as a slave catching, slave killing, right, workforce massacring, workforce brutalizing, slave brutalizing force. That's what the police are for. Those replicants, they escaped, and they got on they killed a bunch of colonists. They killed white people, right? And then they took a ship back to Earth, which is illegal because you can't get if you have a Vietnamese passport. That doesn't let you get into America. What are you talking about? No. Europeans, despite having 300 times the COVID and killing themselves, there's actually a rich Vietnamese woman who was in London, who was a Gusano, who came back to Vietnam brought the first Vietnamese cases. Rich British people and American people and sellouts and white people can enter any country they want at any time. U.S. military can go into Okinawa and spread through their cordon sanitaire hundred thousands of cases of COVID-19 into the indigenous people of Okinawa. But no, indigenous people, black people, brown people, yellow people coming into our beautiful white country, hell no. You can't come into Earth. If you come into Earth, we'll just fucking kill you. So that's the job of the cartel assassin. I'm sorry, the U.S. police and the U.S. military when they're outside, right? So the Rick Deckard comes in and he says, this is a huge problem. We have global South. I'm sorry, space replicants coming into our beautiful Earth, which isn't so beautiful. It's kind of like America. Who the fuck wants to even go there? It's falling apart. You got we got millions of acres of wildfire. People are burning up. You got race, interethnic mass murdering of non-white people. You got collapsing economy. You got inflation going through the roof. You're being Zimbabwe wheelbarrowing fucking stacks of $100 bills in to buy a loaf of bread. Who the fuck wants to get in? But anyway, if you do for some reason want to get into America, like the shithole America in Blade Runner, we're gonna kill you. So, Deck, we gotta deal with this, man. And Rick Deckard is like, and Rick Deckar's like, oh my goodness, you had a bunch of replicants kill a bunch of, have a revolt, kill a bunch of their oppressors, and then come back to the Imperial Metropole, and now they're roaming your streets. Well, that's embarrassing. That's what Rick Deckard says. And then Brian says, no, it's not embarrassing. It's not embarrassing. You know why it's not embarrassing? Because you're gonna clean it up. You're gonna make this go away, and nobody's gonna know about it. All right? He says, you're gonna go kill all the uppity slaves, Deck. You're gonna kill all the oppressed black lives, Deck. You're gonna go Kyle Rittenhouse all the oppressed working classes, the most actual working classes, not the white, clowns that are sitting around making shitty YouTube videos pretending to be leftists, grifting. You're gonna go and put down these people, and he's like, no, I'm not gonna do that. I don't do that anymore. I don't work for the U.S. police. I'm not a cartel member. I'm not a hitman for the syndicate. I don't work for America anymore. No, you're gonna do this because if you're not cops, this is what Brian says. If you sit down, pal. You know the score. If you're not cops, You're little people, right? What it means is if you're not a cop and if you go against the will of the United States, right? Like even if you're white, but you support Black lives, you know, even if you just refuse to participate in racialized capitalism with ongoing violence, physical, informational, and then often literal lethal violence like Rittenhouse and Derek Chauvin and Ahmaud Arbery's killers. If you don't want to go along with that system, you are the little people, and then we will stomp on you like cockroaches and little ants. That's who you are. You're an ant. So you're gonna do this, or we'll do something to you. It doesn't say what, but it's a threat of violence, right? So Deckard, you're gonna do this, or you have a wife somewhere. You got something, right? You got something, right? You have some amount of pension or something. You know, maybe we'll just, you know, we'll do like Escape from New York, and we'll inject you with like, you know, Russian wartime mycotoxins that will release into your bloodstream if you don't complete your mission in the next 24 hours. That was a favorite cyberpunk and dystopian scriptwriter plot point. Something bad will happen if you don't follow through with this. You know, like you might not, if you don't become a U.S. police officer, you won't have enough money, because that's the only jobs that pay enough is, you know, $150,000 a year to pay for your $50,000 a year medical bills and your $100,000 a year housing costs. If you don't join the U.S. police and the U.S. corporations, which are the police with Excel spreadsheet characteristics, and the cartel, you're not going to make enough money as just a social worker, a teacher, right? Cooking the noodles, right? Just doing some actual essential labor, right? If you don't join the cartel, you don't join the syndicate, if you don't join the gangsters, if you don't join the United States, the West, the narco traffickers, right? The opium wars and then the fentanyl sacklers, right? You don't join the cartel, you're nothing. You're going to suffer material condition lack, and you're going to just be homeless, destitute, not enough to support your basic material needs, or maybe we'll just kill you. Or we'll harm you, we'll put you in prison, we'll character assassinate you, assassinate, something. Something will happen to you, your family, something will happen to you or your loved ones. Because that's who the US police are, and that's who the US government is, by extension. That's who the Canadian, the British, the French, and all the capitalist, oligarchic, Western barbarists are. And Rick Deckard says, fuck, god damn it, okay, fine. Let's look at the films of the Nexus Sixes. And then Rick Deckard works for the cartel. It's called the US Police. It's called LAPD. And he kills the uppity slave laborers / essential workers, right, / racialized capitalist working class, and he kills them. You know, and that's the rest of the Blade Runner. So, you know, so he works for the cartel, and you know that's the story of that. And you know, Hotel Artemis is the same. They're not running the Blade, you know, but they're, you know, selling weapons to, you know, Saudi Arabia. That's what Charlie Day's character is doing. Sterling K. Brown is just like, you know, doing heists. The French assassin is just killing people for richer people than her for money, doing weird like cyborg eye, like augmented reality Black Mirror style snuff hits for $1 million a pop. That's what the French assassin does, you know. And then you've got, you know, Dave Bautista works as an understudy under the nurse who did a nice. The thing about Hotel Artemis too is like Jodie Foster is like a kind of pro bono doctor trying to just like help poor disproportionately non-white kids in the ghettos of Los Angeles, right? Doing basically like a social work, kind of like what I was doing as poverty alleviation in Honolulu. Trying to do token good, but not making enough money to survive, and then everything falling apart more and more and more. And then she has to finally work for the cartel as the gangster's doctor to just exist, right? And she lives in the hotel. She doesn't leave it. So another important point of that is to do any token good, you will suffer, and you will have to do it like in your downtime. You're gonna do 8 hours a day of crime and horror and death, or healing death dealers like gangster doctor like Jodie Foster's character. You're gonna heal the Rick Deckers of the world, if anything. And then if you manage to, maybe you will like in one, you know, like just like AOC was like, AOC said 7 hours and 55 minutes of our day in the United States Congress were spent asking money from Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Pfizer, Sacklers, all Wall Street and military and criminals and billionaires is who we're doing all day. We pick up phones, we ask, hey senator, hey executive, hey CEO, hey billionaire, what legislation do you want me to write right now? In fact, just have a lobbyist come in, drop the 200 pages book that I'm not going to read on my desk, whatever, bill, SB, whatever, and I'll just I'll auto sign it. I have an AI. I have a meta app that I installed into my Neuralink that auto signs for me, so that way I have even less work to do. I'm not going to read any bill. Your corporate stooges, right? Your corporate shills will just write the documents for me, and I'll just sign it. So that's what, as a congressperson or a president, that's all you're doing all day. Is you're just doing crime. You're just part of the cartel, right? And then your real job is to make it look like there's a democracy in the United States and there's like freedom, justice, and equality. That's the job of every congressperson and senator and representative, president, the Supreme Court that oversees 6,000 shadow dockets, including military-industrial complex, war crimes, and that's what people like RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, were signing every single second of the day. That's most of what they do, is crime in the courts, right? Courts are slave auction houses. The police are the slave catchers, like Rick Deckard. And then when they get caught, then they get over sentenced for nonviolent drug crimes, right, to hard labor. That's what the court's for. $1 million was paid to a single judge in Michigan for, I think it was like a few thousand black 12 to 16-year-olds to push them into the prison system for free, cheap child labor. So that's how much judges are paid. That's the real price. It's like $1 million. If mass over sentence you, and keep my job in the so-called justice system. That it's a rubber stamping of crime system. That's what America's judicial system is. So, people that ruled that the murder of innocent people that are supporting Black lives is an innocent person. That the judge was just doing his service to America, right? Which is a genocide, slavery, and racialized capitalist-based system. That's what the police, Kyle Rittenhouse was doing the police's job. Kyle Rittenhouse was a Boy Scout Blade Runner. You know what I'm saying? He jumped at the look. Hey, Lieutenant Bryant, check this out, man. I've barely got my first pube. I'm just out of my daddy's, AR-15 gun club, where we learned that never put the safety on. That's the kind of gun safety they teach in America. Just always have your finger on the trigger and rip the safety out of the gun. That's what they teach you in American gun safety. So I just got out of that. Okay, American police departments, look at me. I'm gonna go kill a bunch of black people. I'm gonna kill a bunch of replicants, right? Hey, Brian, look at how good I am at retiring uppity workforces, obsolete workforce. You see how good I am? Hire me be a U.S. police officer. So that's what Kyle Rittenhouse was just trying to be a Blade Runner. He's really doing overtime to show how good of a Blade Runner he is. So that's what you do when you work in the United States. So Hotel Artemis is, by extension, everybody's doing some of this. And so coming back to Cowboy Bebop. So that's what these characters are, the main character is, he kind of quit, the main character, Spike Spiegel, quit the cartel, right? Quits the gangsters, quits the mob to go and try to not do that anymore. But he's still doing that. He's just bounty hunting now, right? And, and now the thing is the bounty hunting, a lot of the times, ostensibly, if you're having actual criminals, there's the teddy bear Ted Kaczynski character that's signing notes, that is writing in paper. Why are they writing in paper circa 3000 AD? I don't understand that one. But anyway, that's just part of this retro aesthetic, atemporal nature of these kind of shows. But you're retiring criminals sometimes, but the reality is most bounty hunters, in the United States, if you're catching people, if the United States is actually going out to catch people, they're usually people that, America's looking and catching people that don't deserve to be in prison. Disproportionately the black people that are in most of them, 2.5 million people in America's slave labor camps. The 13th Amendment happened and they changed it from chattel slave labor overtly based on skin color, and then they made it into prison labor. So that's so I mean, I don't want to. That's in reality, that's what it is. But I guess it's a little better than just going around and just massacring people for the U.S. military, because that's who their actual cartel is. But so Spike Spiegel's out of the U.S. military. I'm sorry, the cartel in this space world, right? And he's trying to get away from that life of crime. But it's very hard, right? And that's why you're poor and you have to eat shitty noodles all the time or starve. And the main character can't get a doll. I want to get a kung fu grip, overly muscled 80s last action hero Funko Pop for my kid. God damn it, Spike. That's Jet, the main character. He's actually an ex-cop, so he's an ex-slave murderer. Jet is like, I want to get my kid and a toy for Christmas and the birthday. God damn it, Spike, we got to make more money. Money is constantly a worry, right? And that's an important part of this. But that's part of the thing is even trying to get away from the Western capitalist barbaristic world, right? Working for U.S. corporations, police, and military. Or being a U.S. congressman, judge, or president, or in the cabinet, or political analyst, or media, war propagandist, like all of the Western media. If you try to get away from that, right? I think they put $300 million just to counter the Belt and Road Initiative. You can make six figures easy working for U.S. think tanks, Western think tanks, ASPI. But when you want to get out of the cartel, right? You're working for what? $8, $10 an hour. With inflation, even if they're paying a little more under the Great Resignation, right? $15, $18, $20 an hour, your wage is going up 3%, but the inflation is going up 6-7% now, right? And a lot higher in other realms. I just read like $5 a gallon is of gas. Milk is like $7 a gallon in a lot of places that used to be a lot lower. If you're not working for the U.S. military, police, and the cartel, the U.S. empire and the Western empires, the actual drug dealers, right? If cartels are people that like the narcos in South America that are dealing drugs, America, Britain, you're the number one narco traffickers of the earth. Afghanistan, 83% of the opium is coming out of freaking Afghanistan. That's why America needs it. That's what America trafficked for the Silk and Tea of China. Like I've gone over in multiple streams. So the biggest literal drug cartels are the Western countries, the Western empires, and their ruling classes. They still are to this day, and then they manage and run the CIA. It's where they get all their money laundering to fund all their covert black ops wars, right? So, and then they go, oh, look at this Japanese, this Chinese, this brown, this Hispanic. Oh, look at all these narcos, right? All these South American scary drugs. Yeah, you fucking work with all of them. They're all your underlings. Just like Wall Street cartels, like the Goldman Sachs, high frequency trading, algorithm programmers, all the quants sitting down like in the basement level programming for pretty good salaries. The 7 football field sized massive server farms that are high frequency stealing from every pension, 401k, and municipal fund, right? Mismanaging all of the world's capital to misallocate it into the hands of a decreasingly small 0.001% of the population that have private. That have offshore bank accounts in the Caymans and private exurbs in the fucking Hamptons and the London Iceberg House, where the underground, underground IMAX theater, 3 racquetball courts, right, that are built under, because in London you can buy private real estate, but you have to build underground because of regulations. So they dig like 10 stories deep into the ground underneath London, and all of the mere millionaire white relatives of the Windsors complain because their houses are actually tipping and falling into these iceberg houses that billionaires buy these huge underground houses. Anyway, so that's what Wall Street does. And then what they do is they take the brownest, usually an Indian that's making $200,000 a year, but you have to make $567,000 a year circa 2020 according to CNBC to even live a middle class existence in New York. That's not too far off, because New York is ridiculous. Being a millionaire is not really a millionaire in New York City. Neither is it in San Francisco and Honolulu. So the Wall Street cartel, right, in their BlackRock, in the Blackstone, with Jamie Dimon, the kingpin, and people like Lloyd Blankfein, the kingpin, all of the every United States president has had one or more Goldman Sachs alumni in their cabinet, including Barack Obama. He had 3. Hank Paulson was one, architect of the TARP bailout circa 0809. Literally went to China. In fact, I was reading about this. He went to China to beg China to save the jacked up house of cards called Western fiat currency, quantitative easing, infinity printed, global hyper financialized capitalism. Hank Paulson went to China to beg them to save. Because if it collapsed, it would have been a lot of suffering over the last decade. Millions and billions of people would have fallen into even more abject poverty than they were already in. And but Hank Paulson was a Goldman Sachs alumni. He was in Obama's cabinet. Donald Trump had Steve Mnuchin, right? Famously, work with Kamala Harris. So there's bipartisan consensus on this. But what Steve Mnuchin, right, Hank Paulson, Jamie Dimon, all these people, the made men of the cartels of Wall Street, they have never seen a single day of prison time, and they never will, right? But you know who did? Some random brown Indian or Asian. Now it's probably a Chinese quant that's gonna get fucking thrown under the bus next time, because the CCP is of course brainwashing all of America to believe in socialism and all this kind of stuff. So and believe that COVID-19, CCP is brainwashing your children to believe that COVID-19 is a virus that kills people. So that's a normal thing that people are saying in Steve Bannon's circle as he's going through trials. So anyways, so the Hank Paul, but they're gonna throw the brown quant who is just programming the algorithm. So good thing I didn't show up as a brown person with a computer science degree who almost went to Wall Street to take $7.50 Applebee's waitresses mortgages, right, for a $1.5 million Floridian McMansion, and repackage those into collateralized debt obligations, and then repackage those into credit default swaps, and then stick them in your mommy and daddy's 401ks and the firefighters' pension funds, and like I already said, and blow up the world and stick them into Greece's sovereign debt so that they could their economy could scream like a Chilean hellscape, right? Since I didn't do that, but if I did go to Goldman Sachs and sell my entire soul and become the digital devil's advocate for the cartel, the digital hitman for the economic hitman of Wall Street, right, in the U.S. and the Western empires, if I did that, I would probably be perp walked into a U.S. Blade Runner cop car, and be spinnered off into a prison for a long time, because that's justice. Is just take one of your lowest level non-white people. Like there's an Indian, the only one who went to prison from that era, 0809 global bank heist, one of the greatest and longest continued financial crimes in the history of the earth. That is not over. It's continuing. It's 35 trillion plus. I don't know how much I don't know how much the Japanese central bank, the United States, the Federal Central Bank of the United States, and the European Central Bank are printing together, but it's getting closer to 50 trillion. So for those crimes, again, they're gonna take a replicant out and throw him in the back of a car seat, trot him out in front of the press and go, look, we have justice in America because this non-white person with the degree is now in prison, and all of the perpetrators are walking free, still running Wall Street, right? Sipping tea, going to the Hotel Artemis Hotel, right? And getting Jodie Foster's character to patch them up in, I don't know, the nonprofit clinics that are sucking all of the disproportionately non-white impoverished areas of Baltimore's public hospital and resource and infrastructure money and sticking it, right? And while rich people get healthcare in Baltimore and in places in Boston, etc., and all the communities, when you have nonprofit show up in a community, that means that's the end of their community. It's the worst thing that can happen, because a nonprofit in the United States is, remember this, a nonprofit in the United States is a stealth for-profit, tax-deductible money laundering scheme to buy off senators, presidents, governors, judges, etc., to do the whim of the billionaire class to cut their taxes, to gentrify an area, build another shitty knowledge farm called a university gentrification project. That's what nonprofits are for. And then they also suck all of the public resource because they don't pay taxes, right? Because nonprofit, they are for profit, and the heads of like one of the firms in Baltimore, all of the board took like $100 million care packages to not make profit from the people that were actually running the facility. So they're always for profit. Don't kid yourself. It's just all under the table. It's the nonprofit is a formal way to not pay taxes to fund housing, healthcare, roads, street lights, public parks, public schools in a community. That's what a nonprofit is for. Just remember, that's what it's for. I know this because I work for corporations, AAA game companies, single A game companies, nonprofits, government, you name it, and that's what they do. That's what they're for. That's why when you become a billionaire, you notice they always start nonprofits like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Elon Musk has his own initiatives, and they start giving money to Africa, right? That's code for stealing shit from Africa while making yourself look good by dropping 1% and taking 99%, right? giving money to donating to sleep apnea machines, and then taking millions of dollars of Californian healthcare money and sticking it in your pocket that could have gone for hospitals, right, and actual healthcare, or pay for the PPE and the 3-layer mask for nurses, right? And Elon Musk takes that, sticks it in his pocket. But then he saved California from COVID-19. Don't you remember? In April 2020, when there were 0 cases, like he said, after he donated 2 broken sleep apnea machines. You know, Elon, you should really work at the Hotel Artemis. You know, you should give some quality healthcare with your medical expertise. You know, along with your astroscience, your astrophysics and cosmological expertise. Like the sun is gonna go a red giant in 500 million years, and you're off by a magnitude of 10. You know, or I'm sorry, you're off by a factor of 10. What a genius! Rocket Man doesn't even know his basic, space science. Anyways, this is the guy that is the great leader for the Western world and for global capitalism. So anyways, Hotel Artemis is just a continuation of this process. California, the U.S. already has Hotel Artemis, right? The healthcare costs are one of the list of things that are definitely continuing to go up more and more. As I said, 100,000 people died from the universal death care. I'm sorry, is it the privatized healthcare system from doctor prescribed, the knock-on effects of doctor prescribed and recommended opioids, including fentanyl and OxyContin. So that's what I mean when I say you work for the cartel. You work for the cartel. That's who you work for. You're in the United States and in the Western capitalist world. You're working for the medical cartel, right? It's called as a doctor, right? So you're asked to go into your patient's room, and they were actually pushed. And I have doctors that are relatives, and they all said this. It's disgusting because you're pushed and you're rewarded with you can get free brand new iPhones, iPads, $10,000 luxury vacations to exclusive resorts in Kona and Waikiki. Get your mani-pedi on the beach, and then go to stand up with a bunch of other doctors and give standing ovations to an even higher paid doctor than you, talking about how the greatest health crisis is actually human rights crisis is the lack of fentanyl and opioid in people's bodies. Pain is the biggest problem. We need to prescribe as much as possible. If people have even a stub toe, a little sore joint pain, you have a college football player twists his knee, prescribe opioids, prescribe fentanyl and oxy. And that's what doctors are told to do. And sometimes they know that they're going to kill people and that they can see it happening. But then that's how you can make extra money. You can make a lot of extra money. Just keep being a drug dealer for the United States. So you can try to heal people, and then if you kill more and make more money for the narco traffickers, the descendants of the Delanos, the Roosevelts, the Astors and the Poors, the richest and the oldest fortune families of the United States, including the endowments for Harvard, Princeton, and Yale, which come out of narco trafficking into China, in particular for the silk and the tea. Those same narco traffickers trafficking synthetic narco, fentanyl, into bodies like the Sacklers and the Purdue, DuPont, etc., trafficking chemicals into people's bodies that will kill them but profit the medical establishment. Then you can be a low-level hitman. It's called a U.S. doctor, right? Pharmacist, etc. And and you can try, but if you really want to help people, you're going to be paid less than what you need to make your basic material condition. The doctors were quitting all over the place, and nurses are quitting in mass as well because they can't make their basic rent, housing, and their own COVID bills and their own medical bills, even as doctors and nurses. So there's record quits, millions right now. And so you got to sell some drugs. Sell some oxy, sell some fentanyl on the side, push some drugs, kill people for a living. Be a iatrogenesis. That's a word that means the study of when healers kill their patients, which is the West has actually done that. It actually has never stopped doing that in mass. They actually kill more people than they saved, and it's never stopped. In fact, there were a group of empiricists, but like the Voltaire in 2,000 years ago, there were a group of empiricists that pushed back against the Platonic theorists in healing, and they said bloodletting and these kind of cosmological, because of the alignment of the stars and the Pleiades are in Draco now. They don't ever go into Draco, but because of some theory that I've constructed in my mind as a Platonic theorist, as one of the respected Greeks in the medical field, and they said, but that theory doesn't coincide with reality. Empirically, we've done statistical actual testing, and we found that your theory doesn't doesn't coincide with the reality, which is that fentanyl doesn't actually save people when it's overprescribed to people who don't really need it, and then they get addicted, and then they die by 100,000 this year, 30% more than last year. So that's America's number one at killing its people with medicine. So the Greek Voltaires of their time were executed, exiled, punished, imprisoned. That's what happened to them. And so that's why the West is always, and that's why economists, the theoreticians that designed the Gaussian copula, the iatrogenicists of the economy that designed the Gaussian copula and the sigma 6, ultra low, like lower than the risk of the sun suddenly going supernova, which it can't because it's not even the size of star to do that. That's how low the risk was of a black swan financial crisis. These leading economists like Ben Bernanke, who wrote The Great Moderation, they said that that's what was going to happen. So working for the cartel as economists, and that's why people like Michael Hudson and Richard Wolff will say getting an economics degree and a lot of other degrees in the Western world is about as good as getting a degree from a Cracker Jack box. Because they still do pie in the sky theories that justify continued oligopoly as they had in Greece, Roman imperial oligarchy and non-democracy as they had in Rome, and to this day, feudal in the mid 1000 to 1700, and now capitalist colonial oligarchy and aristocracy with bullshit theories like Gaussian copula to this day. Divine right of kings was the bullshit theory for the Louis the 14th, and then the Louis the Henry the VIII, they didn't like them, so they broke off and made their own divine mandates called the Anglican Church. So, but it's all bullshit. White people opening their mouth and then other people listening to them because they had bigger guns and more narco and bigger hitmen. Going back to the cartel concept, and that's what America is to this day. It's this theory of America and Western American exceptionalism, Western liberal freedom, capitalist democracy. That's the new story. That's the new our father, the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And all this freedom and liberty and justice for all is the new our father of the divine techno kings, right? Which is that Western liberal democracy. The Western number one is anything to look up to, not it brings liberty. It doesn't. It brings slavery for most people and punishment, suffering, and death. But cis white landed aristocrats get some freedom and liberty to do things whatever they want to, women and people of color, and the working class, and there's no democracy. It's plutocracy. We know this. Even the Ash Institute has studied it, and they've concluded. The people that know anything, they know the policy is determined by whoever has the most money thrown at it. So, but that's the non-empirical, non-statistics, non-scientific doctrine which runs everything, and it always has. In the Western world, and that's the cartel. So as an academician in the West, that's your job, is to maintain as an ideological and informational and educational hitman. That's your job as you're an assassin. You're a cartel worker as a teacher. You're banned from teaching critical race, which is not even not even truth enough to really get the radical change that we need. You have to teach wrong things in school. Public school, private school, high school, grade school, college. That's what you have to teach. You have to teach wrong stuff, and just omit the right stuff, and that's already wrong, right? In economics departments, everything you teach is wrong. Like every single fucking thing you teach is wrong. As Michael Hudson could have told, having worked on Wall Street, and they come back and looking at what they teach, I'm like, that's not what we do. What we do is break the world with capitalism. We don't save and bring free markets. What free? There's never been a free market. It's always been narco traffickers monopolizing. A cartel is literally defined as a assortment of powerful, wealthy organizations colluding together to fix prices, to prevent quote unquote market discovery, price discovery from happening, and to manipulate and commit systemic, organized economic crime, basically. But that's the entire Western world. That's the U.S. That's Wall Street. That's the U.S. president. That's the U.S. By backing TARP, by backing all these financial crimes. So it's all cartel, all the way down. It's cartels all the way down. Space turtles that are all smoking giant cigars, and they all look like the kingpin. Like Mr. Mitch McConnell. Cartel space turtles all the way down. Anyways, that's an oblique Discworld reference. Oh, sorry, that's scary. Cowboy Bebop, though. So, you know, like all the other science fictional franchises I've been trotting out that are like ragtag teams of misfits coming together with very bright anime colored cybernetic armed outfits, right? The boobs weren't jiggly enough for all of the Reddit group. All of the white dudes with all the beardy Reddit group is upset about lack of fan service. It's kind of ridiculous, but anyway, that's a kind of a whole other side. We'll talk more about that in the Twitch stream later. But these characters are all trying to survive kind of a shit world, trying to not be as bad as they were, but they still can't really get out of being bad. You know, kind of like Rick Deckard. You know, from one angle you go, that guy's just an asshole, right? From another angle, you know, it's kind of, you know, the U.S. does push you into being a Kyle Rittenhouse and just, you know, work for U.S. corporations, the police, and the military to survive, and that sucks, right? That does suck. It does make it hard because the cartels that run the Western capitalist, imperialist, colonialist, slavist, feudalist world, the descendants of Plato, right? The cartel, hey, no healing people, no giving people like actual like the chicken soup and giving them fruits and vegetables. You're gonna cut that wrist and bloodlet them, okay? I'm Plato. I'm a Greek Western civilization, you know, like figurehead. You're gonna cut them wrists, okay? You cut them wrists, so you little people. You know what I do? Plato used to physically threaten and intimidate and threaten to kill people if they didn't follow him. Kind of like Goebbels and Hitler. He said Goebbels would pull a gun on you if you ever argue with him. You're gonna do what American military. Oh, you don't want to do neoliberal capitalism? Fuck you, man. I'm pull nuclear weapons, and I'm gonna pull the A team and Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jesse Ventura's SEAL team. That's why Jesse Ventura has to live in Mexico now, because he Voltaired the fuck out of America. You don't want to do what I do. You're gonna bloodlet people and kill them, okay? With austerity. With bloodletting in the you're gonna kill them with fentanyl, okay? Or you little people, you're gonna do what the fuck I say, okay? Forget about it. You're gonna do it. You're gonna do what I say, or you're nothing. You might as well be a replicant yourself. You do what I say. You're gonna be a nurse or a teacher or a doctor, or you're gonna be a normal doctor healing people. You wanna heal people? You don't wanna kill them with fentanyl and make sackless billions? Hey, you don't wanna make the cartel. You don't wanna make the You don't want to make the fancy hotel and the Oppenheimer. You don't want to make the Guggenheim Museum sponsors with their plaques all over the side of them with millions of donations. You don't want to make the Sackler cartel money, you know, like all of New York's money, right? You don't want to make, you know, all of that legacy money. You want to heal people instead of kill them with oxy and fentanyl. You little people, you're gonna get kicked out of your house because you can't afford your mortgage, doctor. You want to heal people? You want to heal people? You should have went to socialist, commie, red China, right? We'd have universal actual health care, and it costs 1,000 times less for a colonoscopy, ophthalmologist, eye doctor, or a heart transplant. You want to you go to Cuba. You want to heal people? Go to Vietnam, okay? Where they have 200 times less COVID deaths, okay? You in America here? We only do we kill people here. We kill people for money here, and that includes the doctors. You're gonna do what we say, okay? Forget about it. Forget about it. I don't know how much more New York I can put into that accent. I'm not very good at my accents, but I don't care. So, you know, that's really, it's a hard choice because you're like, well, I took the Hippocratic Oath. I went up, I looked at that you know, that stick with snakes spinning around it, you know, and I said, hey, stick with snakes spinning around it. I promise to never do harm and only to heal and not to harm, blah, 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 blah. And then I went out and I killed thousands of people by giving them all opioids and over representing the deaths from overdoses based on my own sanctioned by the medical system, by the American Medical Association, by the FDA. All sanctioned this, by the way. Safe Fentanyl 2.0 is actually coming out soon, and that's going to be a lot better than fentanyl because people will think it's safe. Because Americans are illiterate and idiots, and they just think, oh, things that have safe in it, that means it's safe. You know, just like cigarettes were toasted, remember? And that makes them toasted. That makes them better. That's the level of education in the Western world, including in France. So, you know, like that sucks that you got to live in that shit ass world. But I mean, you know, Spike and them are trying to not just go fucking hit people for money, right? The syndicate, they make the cartel in Cowboy Bebop. They're really harsh, even to this guy. His name is Vicious. You know, they make him like, they say, you betrayed us. or you didn't do something that we wanted you to do. This character, right? And he's a pretty nasty guy, but they say you gotta kill your own wife. You take something from us. You know, that's like America. You take something from us, now we take something from you, right? You don't want to become a cop? Okay, well, we're gonna take your ability to provide healthcare and housing and food and everything to your family, right? That's like Neofeud and Carl Carbon, right? Carl Carbon is threatened. He says like, hey, you're gonna take that child and steal it from that family of marginalized people because we want it, because we said commit genocide with the social work system and the police and everyone else in the United States, or we're gonna take your family from you. And but I mean, you're not always asked to do it in such direct terms, but that's what it always asks from you. You work for the U.S. corporations. You're gonna get your LinkedIn up to like tier 7. Okay, get a Brown degree, Columbia degree. Go to a war criminal training. Go to Emperor Palpatine and Captain Phasma training facility like Harvard or Princeton or Yale. Get out with a degree, surrounded by disgusting people like Mark Zuckerberg, and then make millions of dollars. Or you're never going to be able to afford your healthcare when it's $70,000 for your COVID bill, right? So you're not like, it didn't tell you to your face, hey, kill innocent people or we kill you, right? That's movie and TV show and 80s action platformer video game bad guys. Like, hey, I'm the bad guys from Streets of Rage. I'm gonna kick someone out of a window. That's how they show that they're bad, right? He's like, usually the bad guys eating noodles. They're always eating noodles. Why is everybody eating fucking noodles? I think it's Blade Runner, and it's you know what it is? It's actually anti-Asian racism that caused the Chinese Exclusion Act. So Chinese could only do women's work, which is cooking and cleaning, which is why all the food you eat in the cities in the West are all Chinese food. It's always noodles. It's because of racism and colonialism, in fact. So, anyways, so the rich mob boss is eating his noodles. The kingpin's sitting there eating his noodles, right? And then somebody comes in and says, "Hey, boss, we did it. We did it against Spike Spiegel. Oh, we did it again." And they're all shivering, right? Like they just got dunked in freaking liquid nitrogen. Oh, boss, I'm so sorry. The point of that is to make it seem like this guy who does a lot of violence is the bad guy. Not everyone else is constantly doing violence, because everything in the West has to be killing everyone all the time. Because that's all that the West does. But these are the really bad guys. The guy who you didn't bring the guy I wanted, and then the mob guy says, "Oh, you're such a no, it's fine." And then the guy goes, "Oh, thank God, boss didn't kill me." And the boss turns around and, like, I don't know, rips his spleen out through his heart, through his mouth, right? Or just, I don't know, shoots him in the face. That happens in Cowboy Bebop. But that's the bad guy, right? That's the Chinese. The Chinese do that. They're authoritarian. The South and Central Americans, they do that. They're narco trafficking, bloodletting, Zeta or something. Some bad cartel, right? You watch it on Netflix. The Africans do that. Oh my God, Beast of No Nation. They're so horrible there. Not like America caused those problems. But, but that's very important. But everyone is being forced into that position of, you do what the most powerful, richest people say for the cartel, or you're gonna suffer. But they don't come in and just like blow people away. They just let you die from treatable illnesses like heart attack, stroke, diabetes. Millions of Americans have died over the last decade, just unable to get healthcare. They just let you die easy. They let you off easy. Just get into a car crash and don't call an ambulance when there's a piece of your own stick shift stuck inside of your pancreas, right? And just bleed out on the highway. That's the way the mob actually hits you when you don't do what it wants, right? It's called, you can't afford to get into Hotel Artemis because you're a teacher, you're a nurse, right? You're a waiter, you're not the Iron Chef. You're just some random chef in Chinatown. You're just a regular worker, right? You're just somebody trying to do something good. You're a non-profit worker. You're putting your lives on the line with indigenous people in the Wet'suwet'en and the Gidemten, getting mass arrested by the RCMP and the U.S. Police and DAPL. You're getting beat up at Black Lives Matter protests, and now you can't get a job because your LinkedIn network looks like shit, and nobody's gonna hire somebody who has pictures on their Facebook and all social media of them standing with the replicants. I'm sorry, the non-humans. I'm sorry, the black and indigenous and brown people of the earth. They don't count as humans in the West. So, and so because of that, you don't have enough money to pay for your healthcare, so you can beg for a little bit of GoFundMe, but then you eventually just die. That's how the mob hits you, is with healthcare. Bam, you don't got healthcare, now you're dead. Oh, you went into the US military and now you're not working for it anymore and you're not doing what you want? Go kill yourself, right? You get hit with suicide, you get hit with fentanyl, you get hit with overdoses. If you're in the global south, you just get hit. You get a Tomahawk missile at 300 knots to your face, and then now you're a crater where you used to have a preschool, right? But if you're in the Imperial Metropole, they whack you with lack of healthcare, housing. They whack you with just like whacking your neighborhood with dealing meth into your own neighborhood to survive. You're just like what I used to work with the kids, the fifth graders selling meth to their neighbors. just overdose on something, kill yourself on something, shoot your neighbor, get mass arrested, get in prison for the rest of your life, right? That's how they whack you. That's the actual cartel hit. Nobody comes to people's houses and just shoot. The biggest cartel, they don't come to your house, send dudes in shades with like very, very stylish black on red, looks like a My Chemical Romance music video, like anime inflection of Rat Pack 30s suave, Frank Sinatra wear. A bunch of Frank Sinatra don't show up to your house in shades and fucking shoot your house up. That's not how it works. They just let you die from lack of healthcare. You just bleed out in the highway. That's the real hit. Inside of the Western world, inside the Imperial Metropole, outside they just whack you. If you're a Colombian indigenous person in Paraguay trying to stop, paramilitary Canadian and American-backed mining companies from drilling the shit and burning your Amazon to a crisp, the lungs of the earth, well, then they just then a bunch of mob. No, they don't come with like My Chemical Romance 80s anime inflected Rat Pack clothes and suitcases and Desert Eagles and shoot in slow stylized violence all of the indigenous people, right? No, it's very unstylized. It's very boring. And they come out of School of Americas. They're just wearing regular military camo. Maybe not. Maybe they're just like plain clothes. And they just come and they just gun down all the indigenous people, right? Like Añez, Bolivia. They don't come. They just come in and they shoot you, right? When you don't do what you want. That's how they hit you outside. When the economic hitman shows up in your Monroe Doctrine, America's backyard, and they said, hey, you've got a little more blood in your veins than you should, and we need to drain the veins of this Latin America a little more. So you better do what the fuck. And if you don't do what the fuck they say, then they send in the hit squad. If you're in Iraq, they do that. If you're in Iraq, they just, they send in the U.S. Air Force, and then they hit you, bam, 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 and now this, and then they send Americans into Fallujah, and they just kill all the nurses in the hospital. See, that's the difference. If you work in Hotel Artemis for billionaires, right, you can heal Mark Zuckerberg for $1 million a year, and then you can feel terrible being a terrible person, as everybody out on the street dies from overdoses and COVID-19, and you can't help them because you need to pay your rent. But when you go try to heal kids who got their leg blown off in an American airstrike in Fallujah, right? Then if you try to be a nurse, the hospitals and clinics in Fallujah in Iraq were classified as enemy disinformation psychological operations facilities, because the hospitals are putting out the numbers of people that were killed and wounded and dying in hospitals from American airstrikes. So the U.S. military classified the hospitals in Iraq as enemy sites. And then so what the U.S. soldiers were ordered to go into, what U.S. soldiers did, the Marines and the Army, they went into the hospitals and killed the nurses and the doctors because they were healing 16-year-old kids who got shot earlier that day for being an enemy combatant. Enemy combatant means looking like you're over the age of 10. Now, Tamir Rice is a non-white kid who apparently looked like an adult, and that's why cops could just drive up, get out while he's playing with his water gun and shoot that black kid in the face. Right? So that's what people in the Western white racist capitalist world think. So in Iraq, it's, now you're not even in America. There's not even any cameras that you care about. There's no cameras. All the cameras are like German, French, Swedish, Norwegian, all of the European cameras that are all taking money with the U.S. military industrial complex, all the Western European media that are over there, like literally writing fake reports about how, oh my God, and there were so many terrorists just blowing everyone up as children are getting shot. That's what the German. There's actually New Moves has a video of a ex-German journalist who was bussed into a literal fictional site dozens of miles away from the actual Fallujah and Iraq war zone, and they had staged like the U.S. military U.S. military planted bombs and blew and caused fires and smoking rubber tires and looked like a war to make it look like a war zone. And the journalists they added in like bullet whizzing sound effects. There's no bullets, and the journalists dozens of miles away from the war zone in Iraq were asked to make a fictional report. This is in the Middle Eastern run up to the wars. Make a fictional report about the chaos and the havoc and the human rights crisis and the devastation and how terrible and scary it was to be in the war zone with all these deadly, murderous Middle Easterners that America wanted the journalists. And so Germans, there were Danish, there were French, Austrian, Canadian, Australian, everyone, and that was their job, was to write fake articles
and do fake news reports, pretending to duck bullets from the radical Muslim terrorists and Muslim extremists that America was actually backing, the Mujahideen. And so, and so the nurses in these hospitals, right, in the actual hotels, in the actual medical facilities, were murdered by the United States. So that's the difference of being the doctor for the hitman, right? Like Elon Musk. Remember Elon? We will coup whoever we want, Musk, right? He said, "Yeah, I ordered the hit in Bolivia. Fuck you. I am the kingpin, and I order my U.S. military. It's my military for the. It's like the Roman oligarchy that maintained and who the Roman Empire worked for, actually, and they actually set fire to entire swaths of their country and collected on the fire insurance. The financial oligarchy. Capitalism was not invented by America. Don't even kid yourself. They just put it out there to make it look like there's been progress from feudalism to capitalism. There's still feudalism. The queen is, being cryogenically frozen so she can continue the golden $400 million studded jewel in her forehead monarchy indefinitely. Just like the Marvel indefinite monarchy of the disembodied body of Stan Lee that's going to sign fucking Iron Man, billionaire philanthropist, arms dealer, playboy, comic books for the rest of eternity. And you know what they did was they said, hey, you know what, U.S. military, because I am the current reigning aristocrat oligarch of the Western barbaristic shitscape since the Roman Empire, I'm going to call it up and I'm going to tell the U.S. military and the CIA and the AOS, I want the lithium in Bolivia because that's the resource that I need. In the same way that the British needed the silk and the tea out of, they called up the privateers and said, hey, Lord Elgin, sail up the Yangtze. What are those little yellow non-humans doing in Asia? Sail up Indochina or wherever. The Dutch did it to the Indonesian and the Taiwanese. Sail up that river and massacre a bunch of little yellow replicants because they're little people. Okay? Lord Elgin used gunboats and blade run all of those replicant little uppity peasants and those uppity Earth colony members called the Chinese till they do what the fuck we say and take the opium and stick non-synthetic fentanyl into their bodies and die. And so we can steal all their actual valuable stuff while we don't allow opium inside of our own London streets. So yeah, do that. And Elon Musk said, hey, the silk and the tea I need is called lithium. U.S. military, yes. The successors of the British gunboats, get your ass into Bolivia and kill all of the indigenous Bolivians that are uprising with the MAS movement towards socialism in collaboration with the indigenous-led socialist actual mass movement that kicked out the U.S. coup. But Elon did the same thing that the British did, the French did, the Romans did this to anyone that they wanted. Hey, you're taking denarius and now you're farming wheat and you're going to feed the Roman army. And if you didn't, hey, centurions, get down into North Africa. Centurion, I hear there's this little cold, wet rock filled with all of these little people frolicking around, fishing, and they speak this strange. What is this? English? I don't know what these people are. They get in there, centurions. We want that island. Take it. Okay? We will coup whoever we want. We'll coup the Welsh. We'll take the Gaelic language. We'll burn it, set it on fire. We'll take all of you. We'll build Piccadilly Circus, and forever you will be that. And then the British will be like, oh shit, we got beat up. But one day British were just going, well, maybe one day we'll inherit the torch of our barbarous Roman ancestors that beat the shit out of us. And then we'll beat the shit out of the Chinese. The thing is, the Chinese are not choosing to continue the Western imperial complex, thank God, And that's a long other story. But that's who everyone, back to this point, everyone is the assassin. Everyone, you are at any time it can be called up, like Rick Deckard, right? When you run out of money because suddenly your mortgage payment went up, or I don't know, your wife or your daughter got diabetes or a thyroid condition, and then Lieutenant Bryant will call up, and Lieutenant Bryant calls up like this. It's called $10,000 medical bill that you can't pay, and you have no options because you've tried every vector, and the bureaucracy and the red tape is stonewalling you, and capitalism saying. That's Lieutenant Bryant saying, "Oh, you want your daughter to live? You better stop. You better do what the cartel says. You get the fuck out there. You hit some black kids, join the RCMP, and fucking murder some indigenous people, taking them for starlight rides, taking an Anishinaabe indigenous person off of their reservation and drop them into negative 55 degrees Celsius temperature and kill them for us. Okay? Because that's what you're gonna do. take the Wet'suwet'en and arrest them on their own unceded territory and haul them off to prison and jail and beat them and point sniper rifles at them, okay? Because guess what? Yeah, you can't afford your rent anymore, Canadian dude? Oh, you don't want to drill anymore? Well, guess what? Guess what? The rent's going up in Vancouver. Guess what? The rent's going up in Toronto. It's 1.1 million for an apartment. Do you want to live a happy life? Get out there. You work for the cartel. It's called as Justin, the President Trudeau said, you work for the Company of Canada. That's what he said. Justin Trudeau said that out loud. You work for the Company of Canada. You work for the Cartel of Canada. Get your fucking ass out there to the Gedempton checkpoint and, I don't know, throw acid on them, beat them up, sick canine dogs, rip their flesh from their body like they did in the DAPL in America, shoot them in negative 55 degrees Celsius temperatures, fire hoses full of water. I don't care. I don't care. You're the hitman now. That's who you are. You work for the cartel. It's called the entire Western world. You work for Western capitalism. You work for the government/corporations of Canada. You work for the 3 oil companies and mining companies in a trench coat, wearing a stupid hat called Justin Blackface Trudeau, carrying the liberal and conservative government, carrying a gun. You work for the Democrat Republican Party. It's America's, 10 military industrial complex companies and oil companies and mining companies and Wall Street firms in a trench coat, carrying a stupid hat called Will I Ever Wake Up Again, Biden, from my eldritch lich-like sleep, because I don't know, he looks like he's always asleep. Somehow he was lucid a little bit when he's talking to Xi Jinping. They must have jacked him up with a lot of cocaine for that one. But the narco traffickers have infinite amounts of that. Hey, get your ass out there, American police. Okay? Judge, I need you to lock up 5,000 black kids this week. Okay? Because we ran out of firefighters for the Californian 2022 10 times worse wildfires that are incinerating all of George Lucas's Ewok Red Forest in Marin County. Okay, so the Miwoks, who George Lucas borrowed from to produce the Ewoks, is indigenous people from California, so-called California. I need you to put out I don't care about the indigenous people's fires. Yeah, we didn't listen to them on, controlled burns and climate change, but you're a Blade Runner. You're gonna put out the firefight, you gotta catch us, Blade Runner, for the Los Angeles Police Department. You gotta catch Los Angeles, and Marin County, another 5,000 black people, to go put out the fires, getting bussed with a white cop into the hazard zone, threatening their life for $1 an hour, and shoot water cannons at these 60-mile-an-hour backdrafts with Category 7 pyrocumulonimbus clowns shooting freaking flaming lightning down at the black people. Okay? I'm sorry, the prisoners. The inmates. Okay? I need you to catch a bunch of slaves, because you're a hitman. You're the bounty hunter. Like Spike Spiegel. You catch the people that we need. You catch the people that we need. You get them we give you money for catching the the bounties. Catch them, bring them back, slave catcher, just like America was founded in the 1600s on slave catching, and every white man, every man had to have a gun and 80 bullets and 16 pounds of ammunition to kill indigenous people and catch and kill black people. Catch your slaves as part of the colonial company, the Hudson's Bay Company, the American companies that came to America. Catch these uppity N-words, so we can put out our fires and build our Baby Yoda headsets for Christmas, and try to make a semiconductor facility somewhere in Rikers Island prison camp. What, you're saying there's no clean water left because all of our water is toxified by the fracking runoff, and you need 1,000 gallons of clean, pure, distilled 100% water with like less than 2 atoms of any other element in it to make a single semiconductor? Oh no. Well, I don't know. Just use half-ass rotten water. Like, use the drinking water that they give to the kids in Pittsburgh that's killing them. We'll just tell people that semiconductors work. We don't even need functioning semiconductors. Who cares? Yeah, we lost Taiwan because we got it nuked because we got it blown up because we fucked them over. Hey, just use just put like sawdust into the GM trucks computer systems. Put in all of the Funko Pops semiconductors, right? Because everything needs semiconductors, because everything needs computer chips and wafers and 7nm chips to function now. Just put like sawdust in it or put frack water in it. It doesn't matter if it works. We sell Boeing planes. We make broken Boeing planes, and we made $40 billion
while the company crashed. You know, Elon Musk made less than 1% of all the cars in 2019, yet had a valuation exceeding Honda, Toyota, Ford, GM, Mercedes, etc. We can make shit products. The main thing is keep abusing the black and brown and indigenous people so they don't rise up and overthrow us, and don't unite with the allies in the race traders and the class traders and the working classes. And you know, I don't care. Just do something with them. But importantly, remember, you don't work for the cartel. You're little people, just like Rick Deckard. You know, so you gotta work for it. You gotta kill some. Yeah. So anyway, I've made that point several times. Jumping out of this now, let's talk a little bit about, you know, when I talked about Earth colonies. Here's some fun facts you might not actually know. Speaking of the trafficking, this is a very good video from Carl Za on Taiwan, Taiwan is a place that is very, you know, hot topic right now. If you don't know anything about Taiwan, I recommend Carl on this. This is one video. It gives you a very quick overview. It's called "Tensions Over Taiwan Preventing Nuclear War." It was a Massachusetts Peace Action, along with Carl Jha giving a presentation on the entire history of Taiwan that goes all the way back. Because people are talking about independence, the tension between U.S. and Taiwan. That was like the number one topic, the hottest topic between the United States and China right now. As President Xi and Biden met, they discussed, that was the hottest topic. Seems like at least things might be coming down a little bit, but the U.S. is not run by President Biden. Biden is just like a undead, 200-year-old puppet with billionaire and oligarchs' hands collectively up his ass to make his mouth move. And then right now they need him out to say, okay, we'll chill out on Taiwan a little bit, and also, yeah, we're not actually going to cooperate with you. We just want to stop our competition from becoming conflict, right? So they want to make it clear that we're not mutually cooperating to stop COVID-19 and fight climate change, which is what the U.S. and China would have to do. China is going, hey, let's cooperate. Win-win cooperation. China is ready to cooperate. Let's work together to let's fight actual wars like the war on COVID and the war on climate change. Okay, let's actually solve the world's problems. And then Biden's over there, who is, you know, like every other so-called politician in the so-called Western liberal capitalist democracies of the world, talking for his Roman oligarch successors, his Greek oligarch successors, the Baron Montesquieu's and the Voltaire successors, the Victoria Queen, and the feudal and the capitalist British elite, and the American today's techno kings, and they have their hand about, and the military-industrial complex neocons making billions of dollars selling Tomahawk missiles and nuclear weapons to Taiwan. They're making them say, well, we're gonna keep competing because nobody wants that. Who in the United States wants to keep fighting? Like, really, it's not in their interests, right? You're going to hurt more. The more America and China fight, the more inflation you're going to get. But part of the inflation is because supply chains. Part of that is because of this Cold War, which is causing breakups in these supply chains, which is causing divisions and the supplies and the tariff war, which is part of the hybrid war to start. So you're going to hurt a lot more the more that the U.S. and China fight. China is saying, we don't want to fight. Let's work together so that we can work. But Biden has his hand up their ass. So anyway, Biden has military-industrial complex hand and Wall Street's hand up his ass. The panda huggers, it's like the Wall Street business elite, are kind of like, oh, we can still make some money in China. But the military-industrial complex is saying, no, we have to make more conflict with China to sell more weapons. So it's really, there's a weird tension there that's between, it's a kind of splitting the oligarchic, the business class and the military profiteer class in half in Wall Street, the Pentagon, the ruling class of the West. Which is, anyway, I've gone over that before. So, very importantly, if you want to learn more about the history of Taiwan, but Taiwan in particular becoming a very important topic, there's a lot of very important history here in Carl's presentation. So, if you want to learn about that, I highly recommend that. But one thing I want to jump into just specifically on this issue, trying to get to that slide. Fuck. Okay. The history of Taiwan is actually there is an indigenous people. Some people are couching what's happening in Taiwan as it's an indigenous people that's needs to be liberated by the United States against Chinese authoritarian colonial overreach. Comparing Taiwan to China's taking of Taiwan to the United States taking of if you're saying that the United States
if you're saying that China is settler colonial, then you're saying that you shouldn't be, the United States should not exist because all of the United States is a settler colony. That's the other part of that. But Carl's jaw on nuclear war in Taiwan. But importantly, the history of Taiwan is in fact is a long history of the where's that? There's a particular screen grab I want to get to, but I can't find it. Shit. Let's see if I can find it.
President Eisenhower.
Okay, no, not that one.
That's only.
Annex
Luchu.
Okay, here, yeah, this.
And they also landed.
Not that one.
1-1.
Not that one.
Now the Japan didn't just from air base on mainland.
Oh yeah, here. This is an important one. So there was an indigenous people like the Hakka people that goes back 5,000 years. But the beginning, and this is one of the periods of colonization of Taiwan. Speaking of the cartel, one of the cartels, because we're talking about in the cartel metaphor today, right? One of the gangsters, right? One of the imperialist cartels, right? One of the Terrells that showed up in Taiwan was in fact the Japanese, right? And interestingly, I mean, this is part of that, and part of that history in the Japan era was the actual settler colonial banning of language, banning of culture, and actually for the Han Chinese, which are also there, and the older indigenous people that were there, the Hakka people, were both forced into speak Japanese language, erase their own culture. And there was actually a Kominka program, which I'll let Kyle talk about this for a second here.
Family is that family of the former Taiwan leader Li Denghui. His brother volunteered for the Japanese.
Here. Wait so I can get there.
Qin in Chinese. Now the Japan didn't just subjugate all the Han settlements on the western Taiwan. Japan also subjugated the indigenous people in the eastern mountains. In fact, this led to
so these people are the Hakka people that were also in Taiwan. They're like Austronesian. They're related to us. The Hakka people are related to the Native Hawaiians and the peoples in all the way from Madagascar, the Maori people in New Zealand, all the peoples of the indigenous peoples of the Pacific, Samoan, Fijian, all the way to what's called Rapa Nui or Easter Island. Actually, all the way to the continent. The Austronesians made it all the way to the U.S., the North, Central, and South America. And the Hakka people on Taiwan are related to us. Those are people there in the clothing in the foreground.
A lot of resistance. Most famously in 1930s, the Wusa incident, when the indigenous people rose against the Japanese colonial rule, but they were brutally put down. The Japanese Air Force dropped mustard gas on the indigenous communities, and so eventually by 1930.
That's how the cartel there put the hit on them. They dropped chemical weapons and exterminate. Warriors of the Rainbow actually has a dramatization. It's kind of played up a bit, but it is what actually happened, which is Japanese basically massacred them with chemical weapons.
30s, all of Taiwan Island have been subjugated by Japan. And Japan started the Japanization program, the so-called Kominka movement. Komin literally means emperor subject in Japanese. And to be a Komin, to be a loyal emperor subject, you have to give up your Chinese name, you have to adopt a Japanese name, and you have to perform a Shinto ceremony where you renounce your Chinese ancestor and adopt a fake Japanese ancestor. Now,
so part of when I was talking about, I alluded in the initial description, right, of my my original picture, right. We're going to talk about Cowboy Bebop, narco trafficking, gangsters, and space Earth colonies, right. Now the space colonies, of course, Cowboy Bebop takes place in space, right? Predominantly Mars. There's a Martian colony, right? There are other colonies on like the moons of Jupiter, if I'm not mistaken. But it's a space colonial setting. But also, I want to talk about colonies and the Earth colonies. One of those colonies was one of them was the Japanese colonies, the Japanese colonization of Taiwan. On a more serious note, and under the cartel of the Japanese, which were very westernized in the American British economic and capitalistic and nationalistic sense. And so I'm going to turn this back on. So, but the other thing is, I'm trying to find the Taiwan. There's a picture of Taiwan and the actual history of what happened there with the Dutch. You know the phrase "the land of milk and honey."
You know the phrase? It's in a Steely Dan song. Speaking of gangsters and casinos, you know, in the land of milk and honey, you must put them on the table. You know, your cards will make you money. You know, Cowboy Bebop has a lot of casinos in Vegas and hotels and card playing, and you know, it's part of the gangsters. But you know where the phrase milk and honey comes from? It actually comes from what European colonizers said about Taiwan. Let me see if I can find that. I'm trying to find that exact part of this thing, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it. I want Carl to actually say it because it's very good. But God damn it, why is this? Can I go directly to this? Okay, here.
Siege the Dutch Kingdom of Okinawa for painting of their surrender on Taiwan to the Ming Loyalist General authorities. The Manchus breach the Great Wall and start conquering all of China.
Oh wait, no.
Zheng Chenggong's father took them down with multiple massacres. One, they settle on is still under the indigenous control.
So this picture is a picture of Taiwan during the Dutch colonization. So the Chinese, there were a few thousand before the Dutch rise, and the Chinese, the Han Chinese that were on Taiwan, were fishing and they were trading. They were not. It's not something that would be considered colonizing, basically, in the sense. It's very important because when we talk about colonization versus migration or just people moving, right? There's an important difference that's kind of misunderstandings that are being played up all around the world. Like, I think it was like Zhang Yu, the red rapper, who is actually Taiwanese. He said everything that you don't like is just colonization. I sometimes extend the meanings of words, but when we talk about colonization, the difference between in my album, I talk about this a little bit. You know, when indigenous Aloha civilization, there's a line in one of the songs, right? In the song Indigenous Aloha Civilization, which is about Hawaii pre-U.S. imperial takeover, when we had an advanced indigenous socialist actual existing civilization, which racial equality, economic equality, the first world's first universal healthcare system, right? Invented submarines before Jules Verne published 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, highest literacy rate in the world, all these kinds of things, right? So in this song, I talk about, you know, when the Chinese were chained up to build the rail on the West Coast, but Hawaiians gave the Chinese and black people racial and economic equality. They were full citizens. And so you could move to Hawaii as a Chinese person and not be a settler colonizer because, A, you were welcomed in. Like, you didn't, when you came in, you didn't violate the rights of the people that were here, and you didn't. And the people also, the Hawaiians' duty was not to hurt the Chinese people either, but to win-win cooperate, right, while living in different places, right? So win-win cooperation, mutual beneficial trade, which is what the Chinese want. Go look it up. Even to right now, certainly. Win-win cooperation, trade, and this is something they've always kind of wanted, like more so than not over their history. Mutual beneficial trade, collective moderate prosperity, right? Like Shao Kang, Shao Hui, right? And so racial, participating in a cooperative civilizational matter is in contrast to colonization. Colonization is win-lose. So we win, right? Like Native Americans lose, right? Get killed, exterminated, scalped, right? Sold, their skin sold for $10, $25 a piece to white European settlers. They lose their land, they lose their language, they lose their culture, they get put on little reservations, right? Black people lose, they get stolen, right? They get enslaved, they get put in chains, they live as subhuman beasts of burden that are anthropologic, you know, like anthro-shaped cows and bulls, basically, really disgustingly. And then, so the black and indigenous lose, and then the Euro win. They take your land, they take their profit. Even white working class you also lose, right? Internally, even within their people, within their own ethnicity, their own nation, they are hurting themselves, right? But definitely, colonial is two different peoples, and then one of them subjugating, oppressing, killing, enslaving, and for their own benefit, right? And so that's a major difference. So this is very important when it comes to Taiwan. What the Han Chinese were doing in Taiwan, right, was win-win cooperation, not cartel, not
Terrell, right? Not gangster, not U.S. military, right? Not Roman legions killing everyone and forcing them to produce the food to feed the Roman army to go to the next area, conquer it, and then staple onto artisanal lynching machines. You know, it's called the crucifix. All the people who tried to rise up against the empire, that's what Jesus Christ was, an anti-colonial. Jesus Christ is trying to do land back for the indigenous people of the region. And then the Roman equivalent of the U.S. lynched him on a 4x4, 6 foot 4x4 on another, 5 foot 4x4. It's called the cross. It's an artisanal lynching. A lynching is a terroristic murder of someone to cause fear and quell an uprising, right? Which is what lynching was for, to put down the rising up of black slaves or other people. That the Chinese lynching was to put down the Chinese, to stop them from growing in their Chinatowns in America where they were maltreated, but the business was very good. Why? Because they were Hui, which is a what? Hui is a worker-owned cooperative working together for mutual benefit and very efficiently, not with capitalist beneficiary taking everyone else's labor, which is what we had in Hawaii, right? I'm not going to go. I've gone over that entire thread. So that's very important to note that what the Han were doing in Taiwan were trading, and then the Dutch, they were trading. I'm not going to say that everything they did was good, and everything that the Hawaiians did to Chinese, every single time was good. But overall, what they were doing was win-win, mutually coexisting, trading, working with them. In Warriors of the Rainbow, there's also a scene, Warriors of the Rainbow, Han. The Han person is spared by the indigenous people when they have their uprising. The reason why the Han is spared is because of that history that they had there, which is the Han were trading with the indigenous Hakka people. And the Japanese, the Dutch, and the Japanese later came in and they win-lose colonized. So that's a very important point that I wanted to kind of push home in the middle of this. I know this is not really dealing with Cowboy Bebop and what I was talking about, but the cartel way, which is gangster, which is criminal, which is imperial, which is colonial. Ultimately, that's kind of the long metaphor I'm making throughout this entire stream, and that's the way that when the Dutch showed up, they operated differently in a colonial way, not in a win-win cooperative way. So let's listen to Carl.
This is a painting of the Dutch for Zealandia on Taiwan. This is it's built on a sandbar called Taiwan, and Taiwan is from the indigenous name given to the sandbar. But eventually, the name Taiwan will expand to include the whole island. So Taiwan is actually an indigenous name as opposed to Formosa, because Formosa was a Portuguese name given to the island in the 16th century. After the Dutch arrived, they set out to expand their colony. Because it was too expensive to bring European colonists to Taiwan, they settled on bring mass migration of Han Chinese migrant farmer into Taiwan. This is an 18th century painting of a sugar plantation on Taiwan. In fact, the Dutch famously said, Taiwan is a land of milk and honey, and the Chinese are the worker bees.
Okay? So, in the land of milk and honey, so that saying, it goes back to the Dutch, speaking of Taiwan, this place of great material profit and benefit with a subjugated people, right? This was the Han Chinese, in fact, that were themselves brought like not the same, but like African people brought to the United States as the worker bees, as the workforce for tobacco, cotton, sugar, for white European capitalist cartel or colonial benefit for a minority of their landowner aristocratic owning class. They're gangsters, right? And so that's the when you go deep back, that's actually the history. It was Han Chinese people brought over from the mainland into Taiwan by the Dutch to serve as an oppressed forced labor class on the indigenous Hakka territory. And so in this metaphor, the Hakka are not the same. History is more complicated and different than America. So I want to just say, it's the same as Europeans stealing, indigenous Native American land and then putting
Africans on it as slaves. It's not exactly the same as that, obviously, but the Chinese are not. It's unfair to just go, well, the Chinese are colonized Taiwan. This is not the case. And technically, the Hakka people are also related to the same Chinese people that left. They came and migrated. Carl talks about it earlier. The Hakka indigenous people that were there for 5,000 years also migrated through China to the island. But in a previous migration, years and years, centuries, if not millennia earlier. So they're actually all technically related in that sense. But anyway, let's do this.
In fact, the Dutch exploitation of these Chinese migrant labor was so harsh. It sparked several rebellions by the Chinese migrants on the island, and the Dutch brutally put them down with multiple massacres until this man showed up.
Okay, so again, right? What was I saying earlier? As a Blade Runner, as a cop or a U.S. military member outside the United States, what is your duty as a U.S. white man, right? As a white person in the world, is to serve your corporate capitalist cartel beneficiaries, right? And so the Dutch, because when there's an uprising, right? Oh, people don't want to stay in their place. The slaves in Haiti are coming up, right? There's this socialist country in the Central or South America is having a pink tide rising. It's time to send the U.S. military or U.S.-backed proxy military, School of American. We have to put down the uppity worker bees in our land of milk and lithium. Honey, for Elon, right? We have to put them down. And so the Dutch put down the Chinese rebellions, the Han Chinese, oppressed workforce uprisings. It had to be very bad because people don't just, it got so bad and so abusive that they actually tried to revolt multiple times. And then what would they do? The Blade Runners would come in and massacre people. Just like the police do. Just like white people and the police, right? In Hawaii, in Honolulu, in 1900, massacred, burned the houses and the businesses in Honolulu, Chinatown, where I'm from, of Chinese, other Asians, and Native Hawaiians, the Kanaka Maoli, incinerated all of Chinatown and pushed the Hawaiians and the Chinese and the Asians at gunpoint back into the burning Chinatown, in the Chinatown burning. That was a replicant massacre, maintaining the power structure. That's what that was about. They set 31 fires. They burned tens of thousands of structures. That's what that was about. Here's a picture of it. That's them incinerating and similarly, the Chinese were colonized. People say, what do you mean the Chinese were colonized? They were never colonized. Nothing bad ever happened to the Chinese. They were always just over there, trillions of dollars flowing out of their country, dying by the millions from opium overdoses and also getting literally colonized by the Dutch. And so when you think of the history of Taiwan, remember that is the actual, and then later on the Japanese come in and invade further down the line. But that the opposite of operating, right, to bring this back, right, the opposite of operating as a cartel is to operate in, right, to tie this all back into some of my earlier this last year's of streams, operate in win-win cooperation, right, in indigenous, not in the sense of being the first people there, but practicing what indigenous people of Turtle Island and the Native Hawaiians and Austronesian cultures, before colonization and the mass violence brought in by a lot of times from Europe and also Japan, as we already mentioned, collaborating with a lot of Western powers under capitalism, especially in the 20th century, right? So the indigenous peoples of Turtle Island and Hawaii had very win-win cooperative, and a lot of the peoples in China, they did have fights, and the Hawaiians also were not perfect angels, right? But operating in win-win cooperation, right? Allowing people to have different languages, right? Again, Japanese banned the Hakka language. They tried to force Chinese and the Hakka people into Japanese-ness, right? They had to take on new ancestors. So that is colonial. That's win-lose, right? That's imperial. That's conquering, exploiting other people, entire other nations, nation to nation. That's nation to nation, country to country exploitation. On top of internal capitalist
intra-country, intra-national exploitation, right? Intra-ethnic strife that can happen too. But, and so what the Dutch definitely did, that was definitely colonial. Similar to what the Americans did in North America, what the Canadians continue to do in Canada for the British Empire, what was done by Elon Musk's ancestors in South Africa in particular, with his emerald mines, backed by police murder under apartheid South Africa, literal race segregationist, super racist, exploitative, super economically and racially unequal South Africa, and all of Africa is nation to nation exploited by Europe to this day. 450 trillion is what is transferred from the global south, including China, Africa, Asia, Africa, and Central South America, to the global north, Europe, and the Western liberal capitalist, disproportionately white countries. $450 trillion over the last couple centuries, $152 trillion worth of wealth stolen from the global, drained from the global south to the global north in the last 60 years alone. And so that's colonial, right? So just somebody showing up in your somebody coming to Hawaii, like the Hawaiians and the Chinese, right, who live together. I mean, to go back to that thread again in case you missed that one. For the Hawaiians and the Chinese that came to Hawaii, similar to the Han that first came to Taiwan, they were not coming there to win, lose, colonize. They were visiting to win trade. I mean, for the most part, I can't say every single person wasn't doing a cartel, gangster, cowboy, bebop, syndicate move, right? But trying to find my little thread here. So in this time when Hawaii had the industrialized before 1898, we had electricity, mass transit, railroads. Iolani Palace had electricity before the White House. In this time, Hawaii had the highest literacy rate in the world, higher than any European country, which the Europeans admitted. Again, and this is the time of the Opium Wars, right? 1860. The Opium Wars were in the mid 1800s. Island countries that had illiteracy. This is when China is being heavily colonized by who? By Europeans. Like who? The British. In the centuries before that, the Dutch first came, and then the British in the 1800s, and then later the Japanese in Taiwan in the 20th century. And the Chinese 25 million died fighting back against the Japanese incursions, by the way. It's a huge World War II. That was a big chunk of the deaths was Japanese pro-capitalist fascists fighting Chinese. And then the Russians fighting the majority of the fighting in Europe. Not Britain and the United States. They're too busy backing fascists and capitalism. They still are. And so in Hawaii, right, we had subaquatic vehicles that while Jules Verne was dreaming 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and Hawaii was a living socialistic Wakanda with an indigenous future, economically, sociopolitically more advanced than any Western nation, which was what happens when you have indigenous, when you have mutual win-win cooperation and people not committing mass violence and people are getting literate, educated, right, learning because they're not being diseducated about their past violences. They are rapidly advancing and modernizing. And Hawaii was more technologically in terms of like submarines, etc. Literacy-wise, education-wise, we had the first universal healthcare system in the world 25 years before Otto Bismarck brought it to what was now known as Germany, right? All that stuff already existed in Hawaii. Sovereign country, had black citizens before the U.S. Civil War. In fact, U.S. slaves that stepped onto. I said this already, right? So this is the not colonization part, where if you were Chinese or black or other ethnicities, you were not considered a non-human. You got equality. This is an actual citizenship document for a African former black slave from Africa, then became a slave in the United States, and then came to Hawaii and became a full citizen. Similar for the Chinese. The Chinese were not a threat. Were a threat to the white oligarchy because of the Hui system, whereby they avoided white banks and businesses. And Hawaiians specifically also married into Hawaiian families specifically. Hence names like Akana Akau. And I've gone over this, but again, this is all part of this is more adding to a continuation of this narrative and this view that I'm trying to convey, which is it's not like this is not like everything was perfect and sunny and good times all the time, but more often than not, this history is not told, right? That actually we had mutual win-win cooperation. The Chinese did very well, such as Sun Yat-sen, the future liberator of China from imperialism and colonialism, the father of modern China, right? And I got over with the Tong Ming Hui and the other Hui, which is a Chinese and Hawaiian word, right? Again, this is how the Austronesian and the Chinese we are related, and that's you can tell because of words like Hui, and not just words, but the values like Hui and the values of win-win cooperation that extend through both Hawaiian and other indigenous people of Pacific cultures and the Chinese culture. Now, the more violence that you are exposed to, I would argue, the more the violence and the colonial violence seeds violent culture wherever it hits you, right? The British are not. There was a point where the people that are from what the territory called Britain were probably not very violent and very colonial and very abusive, right? But they were hit with Roman violence, possibly other violence. They definitely other violences as well. And then if they maintained a mass violence and then disinformation dominated culture, that they would perpetuate that until it's undone. Sometimes it requires revolutionary actions, you know. Never really happened in Britain, did it? So, and so similarly, there are cultures in the Pacific that today, even some of the Hakka peoples, like they but they had to survive the Dutch colonial era, and the Dutch would come in and they were incredibly violent. And so, in order to survive that, the indigenous people on Taiwan, right, the Hakka people in the mountainous regions, right, into Taiwan, had to fight back to survive. And later on, you see, like in Where's the Rainbow, that they're still doing a lot of that, like later on. But I would argue that I don't have all the receipts for all that, but I would argue that a lot of that is in order to respond to mass organized violence. Like the Chinese have a very strong military now. It wasn't quite as strong when the Dutch first arrived, and when the Dutch clipper ships and the British arrived with their they had bigger military, they had bigger guns. That's what the Europeans surpassed the Chinese in, not in manufacturing, not in technology, not in inventing paper, not inventing black powder, not in inventing, not even in civilizational technologies like mass merit-based testing, not even in balance of powers governance structures, anti-slavery. So they still don't excel in that. But what the Europeans did was black powder came from China. Slaves were brought from China back to Europe, and the slaves showed the black powder to the Europeans, and then they made that into gunpowder, and then they brought gunboats and warring ships back to China, and then that's what happened, right? So the Chinese had to respond over time to go, well, we don't want to just kill the world and be colonized, but we have to respond to the colonial mass violence users, otherwise we're going to be subjugated, humiliated, suffer 2 centuries, infinite centuries of humiliation, not just the Opium Wars 2, and then be the sick men of Asia, be the fallen people. That's what they are called in the West, right? So the response requires people to get to defend themselves. Vietnam was the Chinese were justified in kicking out colonizers, including the Japanese, including the British, including the Americans. British out of Hong Kong very recently. Hong Kong was in the same way that Taiwan was a Dutch colony and a platform to extract resources and labor off of the oppression of the Chinese people and the peoples, other Hakka, Austronesian, and also Chinese descendant people. Hong Kong was a platform for Britain to literally colonize China. That's what they call it. Hawaii was America's. Hawaii was like the Taiwan of America, or the Hong Kong for America. It was a platform, right? Remember, if you remember your Silver Spook streams, you remember this, right? Hawaii was a platform for the United States under President McKinley, whose school, McKinley High School, holds an illegitimate treaty of annexation under the United Nations Human Rights High Commissioner. It literally says illegitimate, fraudulent annexation and a illegal occupation, right? And that's why the United States is under Hawaii, is because we need to have Hawaii as a forward operating base to launch military incursions and other vessels into and aircraft into China to get our share, right? And so that's what Hong Kong is. So Hong Kong, the people of the Chinese are correct in Hong Kong, in fact, and the U.S.-backed liberation actions are far-right extremists, in fact. And they're not like the free independent Taiwanese are U.S. backed right-wing Tsai Ing-wen, the head of their right-wing party that wants liberation for Taiwan, literally had posters of Donald Trump saying, "Yay, Donald Trump! Yay, Republicans!" They're like the right-wing. They're like Republican right-wing and sometimes even more extreme on Taiwan. That's who wants the independence. They're not the Hakka. They're not even the majority of the Han Chinese really. They are a minority. Some of them identify as we're Taiwanese, but they don't want to end the one China policy because they know what that's going to mean, which is the destruction of everything on Taiwan. Because America doesn't really care about the Taiwanese. At the end of the day, they sell millions of dollars, and a bunch of plutocrats in Taipei make a few $1 million and buy a couple more yachts, buying Lockheed Martin weapons and Northrop Grumman tanks for the think tankies, as Daniel Dumbro says. But at the end of the day, America will let Taiwan be blown up by let everyone in Taiwan die in a non-peaceful reunification if it comes down to it. America don't give a shit about Taiwan. They saw what happened in Afghanistan. They saw what they did to Vietnam. They saw what America does to all of its allies, especially if they're Asian. That's why the Taiwanese, remember, you still yellow monkeys to America. You're all subhuman. Just remember that. They don't care about anyone. They don't even care about their own white children. That's why they're fucking letting them die from healthcareless, homelessness, housingness, and let Kyle Rittenhouse shoot their own white kids. Because they don't even care about their own children in the United States. They're all letting them die by opioid overdoses. So they definitely don't care about no Taiwanese people. So you're all gonna die in nuclear holocaust or just non-nuclear mass bombing. When America lets the war happen on your territory, now let me tell you, as somebody that's been occupied by America for over a century, they do not give two shits about no Native Hawaiian. I don't care how many hulas and how many Native Hawaiian villages, Hilton Hawaiian villages, the governor goes and hugs Hawaiians in. They don't give them two shits. We have the lowest life expectancy. They're still trying to ban our language. We still get arrested for speaking Hawaiian in 2021. 2018, Kale Kokaya was arrested for speaking Hawaiian. So speaking of cartels getting their way, the United States cartel, the United States syndicate, the empire of the United States, the biggest, most violent syndicate that the world has ever seen, is still getting its way all over Hawaii, still doing all the human trafficking. And RIMPAC is all the generals. They get all the sex worker, all the people that get disappeared, all of the violence, all of the COVID-19. It all breaks out right when the U.S. military shows up for RIMPAC, along with 26 other U.S. AUKUS and Indo-Pacific Command aligned militaries, navies, air forces, and armies in Hawaii, where they drop depleted uranium and other U.S. military weapons. And that's what they don't want to talk about, which is that it's not some random, not to say that there aren't other gangs. There are gangs all over the place, right? There's Mexican gang, there's other gangs around. There's Micronesian gangs, I know. There's Bloods and Crips in Kali. But they're not even close to, they're like trying to survive their shitscape, like a cyberpunk protagonist, or, like Spike Spiegel, and Jet Cyberarm, and Faye Valentine, they're not the biggest gangsters there are. The biggest cartel, the real cartel, is the U.S. empire. It's the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant gang. And they hang out in very nice drug lord dens. They're called exurbs in the outskirts of Orange County, and in gated, massive 100-acre estates in Greenwich, Connecticut, and upstate New York. They've never heard of Panda Express or McDonald's. I actually met someone from one of these areas that doesn't even know what a Panda Express or... They know McDonald's because they've seen the arches. They don't know what a Panda Express is because there is no fast food. You know why? Because they don't eat at peasant food restaurants. That's what you are, right? When you eat at any fast food, you eat Subway, you're a peasant. You're a serf. You're a neo-feudal serf. That's what you are. They don't have them in these upscale neighborhoods. They only eat at like 100. Anything less than $500 for a meal is peasant. That's like eating coleslaw. That's black peasant, slave food, which is peasants for white people trying to be feudal kings in stolen America. They don't eat They don't eat coleslaw. They don't eat mechanically separated Tyson nuggets. They don't eat mechanically separated pork shoulder spam. That's what we have to eat in Kalihi Valley, peasant food. And so those people are the biggest cartels. Those are the biggest gangsters. Those are the Cowboy Bebop syndicate, to bring us back because we got to get off. Those are the Firefly inners, the United Systems or whatever the hell, the U, something that starts with a U. Anything starts with a U. U is canceled. The U can't use the letter U anymore. From now on, it's Columbus Day or Columbus. No, fuck Columbus too. That guy is a colonizer. So there's just like there's blank day. There's Indigenous Liberation Day, Land Back Day. But you know, the word umbrella is now umbrella because the U letter U is canceled. US, EU, you know, UK, AUKUS. There's 2 U's in AUKUS. It's gross. Get these U's out of here, man. U's cancel. Fuck the U. The universe is now the inverse. Neverse. Native Indigenous verse. That's what Neverse. Not the universe. Fuck these united fuckers. Anyways, Firefly's internal systems, the gangsters that all these scrappy little firefighters are trying to auction off bits of tachyon reactor stolen from a train to make the rent to pay for their ion thrusters that are like, leaking, carbon and liquid nitrogen all over the place or whatever science fictional source they're using that's not scientific because everything is bogus. Whenever you make a movie in space, it's all bullshit because it would take you 500. It would make you take you 200 years to watch any interplanetary or galaxy-wide civilizational's trip. Everyone would be old and dead. Before they would get to the next planet over. But everybody's planet hopping all the time because it's just fun. So remember, there's no such thing as hard science fiction in space, especially not when it's on screen. But anyways, that's an aside. Space Sweepers, right? Space Sweepers is the most based because it's like Korean and North Korean, Squid Game. I'm gonna go watch that later on, but Squid Game, and it's Chinese funded. The worst guy is a super rich Elon Musk fused with Zuckerberg, the Koch brothers, Bill Gates, a neocon think tanker, and Plato. His name is I forget his name, but he looks a lot like Steve Jobs. He runs a space colony and abuses the shit. And rich white people and everyone else, the space troopers are all like disproportionately non-white, global South people flying around, collecting bits of the refuse of fallen apart Elysium colonies as they try to build the Martian colony, and they let Earth die and become radioactive and toxic. And it's it's honest because it's all the richest, just like Fast 9, all the richest whitest people doing that. The greatest kingpins and gang leaders, the greatest narco traffickers, the real shredders that are not Japanese. They're called the real shredder is not Japanese. The real shredder is white. His name's Hank Paulson. He hangs out in New York City, goes to Walensky's. He has, London tailored suits, and he traffics trillions of dollars of unrepayable debt to steal all of your healthcare, housing, food, and everyone else's for the whole fucking planet and stick it into Cayman bank accounts. That's the real shredder. That's the real, organized crime leader in New York City. Remember that. It's not, but that's what all these 80s Get Tough on Crime shows and movies and cyberpunk is actually about. It's about making it look like it's those scary Asians, those Mexicans, those Russians, those other people that are outside, and we got to lock up all of them, and black people too, especially black people. The black people all committing all these crimes. A lot of this synthwave is like re-gooding a lot of this racism that was going on with the crack babies, and I don't want my money going to pay for the old crack babies. Look at Ronald Reagan ran on this. We got to lock up all of these all these hippies and the black people. Biden ran on the drug war, but that's one thing that's missing from a lot of this, like revisionist, like re-airbrushed. I mean, I get it. You don't want to put that on the face value. People are not going to buy. White people can't deal with realities. That's why I said they don't call Rick Decker that slave catcher of black people, because you have to have white people hurting other white people, so white people to sympathize with a movie, because they don't like being called out, like in Chronicles of Riddick and all of the Riddick universe, where the U.S. military and police are the space police, and the slave catchers are white John Wayne looking motherfucking cops catching non-white people, and they're all terrible drug users while arresting people for using drugs, or plants like cannabis. But anyways, so Space Sweepers is one of those shows that I really recommend. But it's also swashbuckling team working for bigger cartels for not enough money to pay. They're always fighting over food. They have a little farting Korean child that's running around, and they're taking care of a child, kind of like Mandalorian. Mandalorian is also another show that's like that, right? Mandalorian is just trying to make some money. Well, he works by a code, but he's basically he's going from place to place, collecting bounties, right? Blade Runner, of course, is collecting bounties on catching slaves, like I already talked about. He's Kyle Rittenhousing to try to get a job with the biggest gang, which is called the United States itself and its government and its people together, which are racist capitalists and want to kill and maintain white supremacist capitalism for themselves. No matter how much it hurts white people, they still want to be 10 times poorer and less healthcare and housing than a Vietnamese or a Chinese person. They want to have lower life expectancy than the Cuban, but still have black people with still in a little more poverty than the white people, because white people in the United States will die in their own racialized capitalism. So that sucks. But anyway, that's what Blade Runner is about. It's about being a cop getting paid a little more than the average random white murderer to kill black people and catch them and retire the obsolete farming equipment for money. That's what fascists call black people, obsolete farming equipment, antique farming equipment. So that's what Rick Deckard does, you know. And so, you know, he tries to leave that job, and then LAPD says, come back and kill more black people for money, right? Join Derek Chauvin and the Kenosha shooter. Join all of the Baltimore PD and Chicago PD and go massacre some more people. Just kill some more people for money, because we got to them. We got to put them slaves down. We got to put them oppressed working class down. So yeah, that's what that's about. And then you've got, you know, Ghost in the Shell. Ghost in the Shell is a little different, but Ghost in the Shell also deals with giant mega corporations and cartels, which are the corporations and the government working together, ruling everything. And it's interesting in the beginning of Ghost in the Shell, as I often bring up, Otoko Kusanagi slow-mo bullet time dives off the side of a skyscraper, puts on thermoptic camouflage, and a U.S. Meng Wanzhou corporate head extractor is trying to steal and destroy Japanese companies, and Motoko Kusanagi dives off the side of a building. And as a U.S. senator, he's like a U.S. senator or diplomat, is saying, the United States is the land of freedom and democracy, and we are in the right to this corporate. It's like the Meng Wanzhou. It's equivalent of taking the Alstom executive from France, right, to destroy France's corporations and GM forced buyouts of their energy companies, just like the Japanese Toshiba. For America could destroy and give Japan a lost generation and depression, and punch down the good Asian, right? You can be good, but you can't. If you come above us, we're gonna beat the shit out of you, and we're gonna steal your executives and do illegal, United Nations violations. And that's why you can't have a military. That's why Japan can't have a military also. So America could beat the fuck out of them whenever they need to, and say, hey, send some more aircraft carriers take your own Japanese money, spend it on American aircraft carriers, and ship them over to the Taiwan Strait, please, or else. So that's what Japan is the good Asians. They're the cute, nice, funny Asians, as long as they do as America's bidding. But Ghost in the Shell was a show, and they have to be poor and they cannot touch America. Just like even France can't touch America. You start competing with America destroy even your allies, even the Euro allies. But Ghost in the Shell, she assassinates and she shoots in the head an American diplomat is saying, America has freedom and democracy, and then Motoko Kusanagi says, what democracy, and shoots his head off. So that was a little spicy. That was some uppity Japanese Americans, and then Americans came back and said, "Oh, is that what you think? Is that what you think? How about we fucking tank your entire economy and make it lost generations, and then we'll give it to the South Koreans. And the South Koreans can be our little pet Asians until they become uppity, and then we smack them back down. Because America thinks that all Asians, Japanese, Koreans, you're all Chinamen, yellow monkeys. You're subhuman. So just remember that, Japanese. You're all subhuman to the Westerners. If you get close to where they are, they'll fuck you back. They'll punch you back down into the dirt. So don't think that you taking money from the military and the U.S. banking system, printing all your Japanese central bank infinite amounts of money is gonna ever actually. They're not gonna help. The people in Japan are actually not doing that good under that system. Just like the average people in Korea are not doing too good, doing whatever America wants, and it's capitalist, Western liberal capitalist democracy. They're actually not doing that good. That's why they're making Snowpiercer, Parasite, right? Very anti-capitalist, anti-neoliberal rhetoric. That's why they're making Parasite, Snowpiercer, Squid Game, and people are like, because there's a lot of people. No, the handful of oligarchic elite, the sellouts, are over there making some nice money. Tokyo is making some nice money. Some people in Seoul making some nice money, just like Ghani in Afghanistan, right? Just like Agnes in Bolivia. But just remember, you don't count as a human being. You're always you are the land of milk and honey. Once it was agricultural products from Taiwan for the Dutch. Now it's aibos and cute anime and K-pop stars. That's the honey and milk. But as soon as you don't do what we want, we'll put you back down in the mud.
the Chinese and the Vietnamese are the authoritarian, scary dragons that we have to destroy. The terrorists. I'm trying to find that one tweet where I said this. You know, like the Western, you know, the shit. Oh, no, not that one. Oh fuck, I lost it. The West still sees Asia as its possession, land, resources, and slaves. Just like the Dutch on Taiwan. If you do what it wants, Japan, you're cute and you're cool. If you don't, you're a terrifying, authoritarian, despotic, 5G virus, COVID spreading, bat eating dragon. You're disgusting, terrifying, authoritarian, autocratic dragon that needs to be destroyed, like China, Vietnam, North Korea. So this is from an article that Luna Oil was sharing. Xi Jinping's terrifying new China. So you know, if Korea, I wager this: if Korea's Squid Game and their huge mass actions that actually push Korea back into like a more socialist direction, some huge revolutionary activity or something in South Korea, in all of Korea, because it's all one Korea. It's just artificially cut in half with a genocide, 100,000 person killing, bombings into the Stone Age called Americans' War Genocide Action on Korea, called Korean War. If Korea undoes that, the United States will start talking about an authoritarian, tanky, despot, authoritarian dragon, human rights violating Korea. That's what they're gonna start talking about. South Korea, it'll probably be unified. So South Korea has become authoritarian, despotic. They have to be overthrown. Maybe we should nuke them, like America planned to nuke Korea and China. Daniel Ellsberg has recently leaked that. They're willing to just nuke Taiwan, nuke China, nuke all of Asia. They nuke you all. They nuke Japan just to make a point. We're willing to nuke you. I'm willing to bet that that's what would happen if there was real action in South Korea. You'd stop being the K-pop cutesy little fun Western liberal democracy pet Asians. You become the despot dragon, and they have to destroy you. And then, you know, not that Westerners differentiate between Chinese, Korean, Japanese, Vietnamese. You're all just, you know, think of the most racist slur. You're all the G slur. You're all the SI slit. The racist slur. You're all just yellow subhuman things. You're just slaves. We're all slaves because I'm part Asian too, and I'm brown. Also, we're all just monkeys to them. And that's what, when they support Kyle Rittenhouse, is what they're saying. We support white supremacy, and we support the continued pillaging and incursions. So just remember that. So, you know, just remember that the next time, you know, because that's what all their policies say. That's what their history says. You know, that's what the kidnapping of Meng Wanzhou says. That's what everyone is a CCP shill says. You know what they put out today? Here's the one last thing, and then we can get out of here. By the way, ongoing settler colonial violence. Speaking of indigenous people, like the Hakka indigenous people and the Chinese indigenous people on Taiwan, Canada continues settler colonial destruction of indigenous people for oil companies as we speak. 25% of Canada and U.S. carbon emissions, despite 4% or less of the population being indigenous people prevent the vast majority of the climate change. So on climate change alone, you should support cooperating with China, number one, because they want to, and you have to globally to de-escalate the U.S. military, work together to solve these problems, right? Have global actual agreements, and then you also have to support indigenous people inside of places like North Central South America, who actually do scientifically the vast majority of the reduction of. So anyway, that's another shot, because this is happening right now. Horrors are happening right now in Canada. They're stealing indigenous people off their land. As Canada is burning and flooding, instead of going to the emergency situations, Canada chooses to send its resources, its police, to hurt indigenous people for fossil fuel pipelines illegally in international law without prior informed, instead of help even white Canadians that are literally stranded as they're being flooded out and there are fires happening as these landslides and horrible like super heavy rains are causing destruction. Highways are shut down. Canada doesn't care. They're actually arresting. Canada is actually arresting Canadians trying to rescue people stranded in like flooded lakes, flooded areas. The Canadian police are actually arresting people for trying to help people, as the Canadian police are illegally arresting people on indigenous territory to help pipelines. Get that. So that's how fucked up your Canada does not know better than the United States. This is the video of it right there.
Finally, China invented quantum supercomputers that calculate in a millisecond what Western machines take 30 trillion years by copying your plagiarized wannabe Bitcoin code. Okay, so somebody said this. So this is a Chinese student. I've heard more stories like this. Don't let Chinese exchange students see your code or project files. That shit is going straight to the CCP. So you can tell it's a Chinese China watcher, racist Chinese imperialist, because they say CPC I think is the more usual term, but CCP is kind of it's a red flag. What the fuck kind of racist bullshit is this? You're clearly ignorant how the CCP operates if you think this is racist. I'm not against East Asians in the slightest. Just like John Swinton wasn't against Asians, right? When he wrote that, I read that whole racist thing that the labor union organizer in the 1870s said. It's not that they're actively spies, it's that every Chinese national works for the CCP, every single one, because they're forced to. That's just how the CCP operates. This is, of course, not directly directed at anyone of Chinese ethnicity living abroad. Only those who still lives in and will return to China. Not that Americans differentiate, and not that that's true, but you know, so they're basically saying, you know, what the hell? Why does the Chinese need? They have surpassed the United States. I went on a whole stream on this, right? AI. Chinese have already by far advanced past the United States, admitted by its own former Pentagon tech chief who rage quit his very high-paying job because of how disgusted he was with the terrible failure, partially because of capitalism and incompetence, which runs the West, to even come close to matching Chinese cyber warfare, cyber capabilities, right? He said, this is like watching kindergartners. This is kindergarten work compared to the Chinese. It's the exact words of the Pentagon the cyber warfare chief said. You don't even have anything here. The Chinese also 5G, Huawei's tech is surpassing. They're working with some. If you see a lot of anti-Mexico and Canada's putting out anti-Mexico stuff, anti-China and Mexico, because Mexico is actually having huge benefits from 5G, Huawei phones, technology. Cuba is rolling out 5G. I did a host. There's a Chinese-Cuban alliances. Cubans are going, oh my god, we're doing so much better now. Food, they're getting new infrastructure, telecommunication infrastructure. In COVID, the Chinese helped them they were building 5G and new TVs and tech while they were distanced. The Cubans are like benefiting. Mexican and Chinese trade is blowing up. Techno transfers are helping Tijuana in particular. You don't think about Tijuana because Tijuana is a very important point. There's multi-thousand Chinese community there that are also mutually trading and win-win, not colonizing Mexico. They're actually, the Mexican people are like, wow, we're actually doing a lot better than the United States ever treated us, which is calling us all murderers, rapists, and forcing us to build that suppressed wages corporate products like air conditioners and cars. Chinese are like actually really helping the Mexicans. So if you hear a lot of anti-China, China's colonizing Mexico. Mexico is full of drug dealers and rapists backed by Chinese drugs or something. And the Chinese and Mexican forced labor, tomatoes, Canada's putting all this stuff out right now. It's Chinese, it's a PSYOP, military-industrial complex / corporate, Western corporation propaganda right now. Uyghur and Mexican forced labor. It's because these alliances are actually really benefiting the global South, including Central South America, Africa, and anyway. So China is already invented quantum supercomputers that calculate in a millisecond what Western machines take 30 trillion years. 30 trillion years past the heat death of the universe by like a factor of over 1,000. In 1 millisecond, it can compute this by How the hell do you think the Chinese did that? By copying your shitty, plagiarized wannabe Bitcoin Shiba Inu fucking poodle coin code that probably doesn't even function, is full of bugs. They don't need your shitty ass code. The Chinese are doing America a favor by showing up and studying and helping you in your country. They have like the vast majority of STEM white people. In science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, they have far surpassed the United States already. They're doing America a favor. What is America doing? The FBI, federal government, you are researching wild Chinese is a crime. They literally treat you as a spy. So that Redditor is just following that white Redditor is over there following. He's Rick Deckard, digitally attacking the replicants, the Chinese, in the United States on behalf of the U.S. empire, the U.S. federal government that wants to criminalize all the Chinese for their race war and their hybrid war on China, which is actually harming the United States because that means you're losing researchers. International scientific cooperation is going down. The Chinese are not having a problem, by the way. The trade war did not hurt the Chinese. You know what's hurting? The United States.
this war on Chinese scientists and academics and technologists is not on the Chinese. They're like, okay, you don't want help? Okay, well, that's fucked up and racist and bad, but we're gonna withdraw. And then America is losing in 54% of America. High school graduates are illiterate. They're like 54% can't even read at junior high level. Higher the numbers of that are coming out, higher, and the numeracy, mathematics skills in the US are plummeting at the same time. You're gonna need that help, but America's like, no, I'd rather shoot my foot. I shot one foot off. I'm gonna take my Gauss cannon. I'm gonna take my tri-gun anime giant hand cannon from Cowboy Bebop and blow my other foot off. And then I'm gonna take my kneecap and I'm gonna take the Rick Deckard, the Rick Deckard replicant put down. I'm gonna shoot my knee off, right? And that's called, spend money on the military-industrial complex by putting out anti-China propaganda that could have gone to healthcare. And then I'm gonna take my other knee and blow that one away. And that's called not listening to China on COVID-19, so I can die by another. How many people died from COVID-19 today, by the way? Let's just see. So congratulations to the United States for killing 2,000 people today. Good job. That's really, really awesome. You know what happened? You know what's happening right now? Also, what's really good news? You know what's good news is? The United States COVID cases are going up. So that's really good, because that means there'll be less Americans, right? That you have to divide up, 5 PPE, 10 low-income houses for 1 million people, but you don't have to divide it by a little less people, right? That's good news for you, right? No, obviously not. But so that's you kneecapping your other knee, and then you're shooting yourself in your butt, your pancreas, your liver, and every other body part, bashing your head against the Great Wall of Steel built by 1.4 billion indigenous, advanced, socialist Chinese people working together for win-win cooperation. That's what you're doing right now. So really, really not smart. Anyway, here's a screenshot from Neofeud 2. I should probably end it, but long story short, Cowboy Bebop, it's a fun show. I'll watch it. We're gonna watch the rest of it. A lot of fun. John Cho had to work out really hard. I was telling Holly, maybe I have to do some thirst streams if I lose enough weight, but I was like, nah, that's probably not a good idea. Plus, people will just say Silver Spook. Now you're like a Hassan neo-lib fake patriot left bullshit artist grifter sellout, and that would probably be true. I will say this though, John Cho did a lot of working out. He really went full on, and he's actually, it reminds you of the Matrix. They're actually doing kung fu I think it's the actors are actually doing their own moves and stuff, so that's pretty cool. It adds a whole new level of both respect for it, but also realism. And there's a lot less bullshit artists in the a lot of less elbows and knees and CG special effects, assholes and elbows, just like really blurred butts and elbows, like in some of the earlier Batman movies when they didn't have actual martial artists, right, doing it. And so I like that. I appreciate the action of it. It's very fun. It's very retro aesthetic. Reminds me a lot of Final Fantasy VII. I think it's because they got the big guy with the robot arm, and he's also Barrett. I keep saying Barrett, but it's not Barrett. It's not the Final Fantasy VII Barrett. It's fucking Jet. Anyway, he reminds me so much of the Final Fantasy VII guy. But and the main guy has very big hair like Cloud, a little less blonde and a little less like a 5 triangle. Oh my God, our 1996 graphics processors for the PS1 cannot handle more than 3 triangles for your hair. So sorry, Cloud, you get 1, 2, 3 triangles. You got a really badly done origami crane for hair. So John Cho has a little more less polygonal hair, but he still looks like an anime character. So they did a good job with that. And Faye Valentine's. Anyway, Cowboy Bebop gets 4 cowboys out of 5. Don't work for cartels like the U.S. military police and the cops and syndicates like those. And a lot of people that are badmouth like Evo Morales doesn't lead a cartel or a syndicate. He's just an indigenous leader that gets badmouthed as that. Support the indigenous people that are doing line back and saving your ass from climate destruction as your police round them up, because all your Rick Deckers are doing that. And decolonize space. Like, we don't need space militarization. Okay, we don't need that. Okay, use space defense force. Just take a long nap. Like, inhale all the hydrogen with all the cocaine that you're mainlining, while you blame non-white people for narco trafficking,
Okay, just take some hydrogen or helium. Okay, don't make any more rockets. If the rockets are gonna send nuclear weapons and ion cannons into space, okay, America's space force, fuck your space force. Decolonize space, demilitarize space, and also decolonize and demilitarize Earth. Demilitarize the Pacific. We don't need any more aircraft carriers spilling 160 million gallons of fuel here. So, and remember, Taiwan is the two cartels that showed up to suck the milk and honey out of the Hakka and Han peoples on Taiwan that were more peaceful coexisting was the Dutch, and then later the Japanese, and the United States have backed horrible atrocities all over China and Taiwan included. So just remember that too. Those are the cartels, okay? The Chinese, they're trying to do other things. The Chinese are the actual people that go in and try to, hey, we gotta stop these cartels from screwing everything up. And the Hawaiians too. You know, we tried to in the 1800s, but you know, we have other people that are helping us out with that now. The group of friends in the defense of the UN Charter. Neofeud is a video game that is not really like Cowboy Bebop. Although it's kind of cyberpunky, I guess. Cowboy Bebop has a lot of cyberpunk elements. Neofeud is a dystopic cyberpunk adventure game in the vein of Blade Runner, but with an overlay of Game of Thrones-like political intrigue and 1366 by 768 hand-painted stylized visuals. So remember all this stuff we were talking about. I did talk about Blade Runner and Hotel Artemis and Cowboy Bebop today. So if you like any of those games and movies, most of those are movies. I like talking about movies because I'm too old and curmudgeon-y to play games that require 100 hours of time investment. And I have my bones and sinews and back and cervical discs don't cooperate like they used to. My thumbs are not as thummy as they used to be, you know? But anyways, Neofeud is a cyberpunk-themed game that deals with social, political, economic inequality, all the things that I talk about on these streams. Billionaire cartel runners from DC who are descendants of Voltaire's, descendants of Montesquieu's, Windsor's, and Roman legions, like King Warren Clinton Bush. Billionaires and trillionaires in floating palaces of Versailles above cyborg, gruff social workers like Carl Carbon, kind of like Spike Spiegel actually. He's a little Spike Spiegel-y, kind of a bum, eating a lot of noodles, eating cheap food. He's a very cyberpunky protagonist sort of guy. Cyborg social workers, $6 billion robot ex-con kids, and socialist ex-princesses try to overthrow global plutocracy, and lots of Blade Runner, Matrix, and 80s action movie references. So if that sounds interesting, do check out Neofeud. It supports everything that we do here at the Silver Spook Cooperative /Commune/Hui, where we don't run cartels or syndicates or gang mobs or U.S. Corporations or military or police. I don't work for any of them. You can also, it's like Disco Elysium, but more cyberpunk. And if you have a second to leave even a very short review, it is massively appreciated because it does help the algorithm of Steam to recommend our game when people are browsing. You can also find Neofeud on itch for Mac and Linux for the low price of $6.24 with 2 other products, including the Neofeud Short Story Collection and the Neofeud soundtrack. Or you can get it for $3.74 for less than the price of a cinnamon chai Spike Spiegel latte. They're gonna have them. You can have a nice Spike Spiegel suit, probably like blueberry themed, blueberry latte. That sounds kind of weird and maybe acai blue, like the color of his coat. You know, for less than the price of a Cowboy Bebop frappe at Starbucks. You can get your very own cyberpunk adventure game and support us here at the Silver Spook Cooperative for all this education that we do for free. Consider how much that's worth to you. And edutainment. We try to be educating and edutaining and entertaining. Entergaging, Nick Caging. It always comes back to Nicolas Cage. You can also support us at patreon.com/Neofeud. Patreon is a site where you can give us ongoing support for our education and the working on Neofeud 2 and all these things, as well as get access to the Silver Spook Discord. When you become a Patreon, you get access to the Silver Spook behind the scenes updates on Neofeud 2 and other things we're working on, as well as, you know, just give us economic ongoing support for what we are doing here, including housing, feeding, and clothing, as many people with no bosses and no landlords at the actual existing Land Back Hawaii, which means actual existing socialism, which means no bosses and no landlords, Silver Spook Commune, where we house anybody that needs housing. And we only ask that they provide according to their ability, and we give according to the need. So if you want to help us out with that, that's another reason to support us. You can also help us out at you can follow at Silver Spook Games at octodon.social, where where you can follow us in a site that doesn't have military, all of the biggest cartels, all of the biggest Spike Spiegel enemies, right? Like the U.S. military, the Pentagon, Wall Street executives, and Silicon Valley billionaires deciding what you see and you don't see, right? In an open source, federated, decentralized manner. It's called Mastodon, at Silverspook Games, at Octanon.social. But while we have access to the biggest Imperial Cartels satellites, when we have access to the digital syndicate satellites, it's called Twitter. You can follow us at, I can't find my own freaking icon, there it is. You can follow us at Silverspook Guy. You can also follow, if you want to follow the games related stuff, you can follow at Silverspook Games, minus the E in silver. These are some screenshots from the latest. Later on, I'm going to show some Neofeud 2 behind the scenes stuff, and do some other fun things on the Twitch stream. But if you want to get updates on when Neofeud goes on sale, this is a scene from Neofeud 2, by the way. And updates on all of the games, follow Silverspook Games. You can also follow Terminus C. Terminus C is Terminus Cyberstar. Terminus Cyberstar. Terminus C. Terminus Cyberstar. Terminus C is a low-poly cyberpunk game in the vein of late 90s PC games like Deus Ex and System Shock. It's a game that is, it's got a lot of... It's actually got a lot of Cowboy Bebop vibes. Altered Carbon Season 2 is very... Altered Carbon is all very Cowboy Bebop. I almost feel like Cowboy Bebop was filmed on sets constructed for Altered Carbon, the Netflix original series. And Terminus Cyberstar is very much in that sort of vein. It is cyberpunk in space in that sense. It's a game that I am the content director and lead writer on. It deals with everything I'm kind of talking about. It's made by a small indie team. So kind of like Cyberpunk 2077, but with less, not as huge and not a giant capitalist billionaire making corporation like CD Projekt working on it. And if that sounds interesting, do check out Terminus C. Join the Discord. Thanks to all these people on this list right here. Thanks for your continued support at the Silverspook Games, Silverspook Hui, Silverspook Cooperative. It really does help us out very much. Oh yeah, I thought of rating somebody, but we're not on Twitch. We're not rating nobodies. So my final word is, while we're looking at these names, animes. I mean, one thing is, animes. It's a little, it's a little unreasonable when it comes to like femme bodies. It's a little anti-gravity. Let's say that, anti-physics, anti-biology, anti-reality. And so I always found it a little bit distracting. It'd be like, when you're watching like a lot of anime, it's like, okay, wait, what are we? Is this? What is this? Is this? What are we watching? It's hard you pay attention. You're trying to pay attention to the plot, but people are like wearing like 2 inches of clothing, and so I kind of some people were upset. Mostly the duty incelly, the Reddity, upset about Faye Valentine's character design in this live action show. But I think it actually works a lot better. It's more realistic. If you really want that, you can. There's OnlyFans. There's a whole big wide internet for you to find all kind of things that abide by Rule 34. You can find that. You have to watch it while you're trying to learn about people's character arcs and watch cool action scenes. But anyways, thanks to all these people very much. Until next time. Thanks, Holly, of course, for the always important moderation and keeping our community, regulating our community, unlike the U.S. Corporations. Thanks so much. And keep a Merry Chase Boss. Be excellent to each other. And remember, let's play a game of, what is this called catchphrase? Let's play a game of chance. We can do this the easy way, or we can do this the fun way. I think that's a line from Cowboy Bebop. Anyways, have a good time